Union proposals offered Friday. The unions offered to work on Sunday if the company will rehire 4,000 laid-off miners as the company opens new mines.
Are riding with state troopers. News Center 5's John Mongol reports the marshals are arresting and holding the stopped pickets for contempt of court.
Despite new, heavier fines levied against the union and strike leaders yesterday, pickets were out in force today in the 13th week of the United Mine Workers strike against Pittston Coal. But today, U.S. Marshals from several states joined the state police, coal trucks, and pickets on the narrow roads.
People are being stopped by the state police, and within the state police cruiser, there's a U.S. Marshal. The state trooper issues a citation to the driver. U.S. Marshal arrests the driver.
The new federal initiative apparently stems from U.S. District Court Judge Glenn Williams' vow that everyone obstructing coal traffic would eventually end up in his court.
The federal government told us that we were going to do this, and we agreed to work with them on it.
Frustrations appear to be growing among the union members here in Southwest Virginia as the state police and federal authorities continue to limit their areas of protest. But union leaders say that the spirits remain high and that the union's back will not be broken. But the question is what tactics the union will be able to use to make its point. Peaceful avenues of protest appear to have been all but eliminated by numerous state and federal injunctions and fines imposed on the union.
I wouldn't be too shocked to see the National Guard marching down the highway here and serving subpoenas or whatever, dragging people out of their homes. Just as long as we don't interfere with a coal truck here, everything's all right.
Some 16 miners were arrested, handcuffed, and held in buses that union members are calling rolling jails. And the pickets see the state and federal government sided with the company.
They make the rules. They got all the money. And we're just the folks that make that money for them, and then seems like we always end up on the wrong end.
In Dickinson County, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center 5.
Counties today are in a bond hearing going on now. The 16 were transported to Abingdon for the hearing. Bonds are expected to be between 5 and 10 with criminal contempt for impeding traffic on Southwest Virginia coal haul roads. And News Center 5's John Mongol reports more pickets were charged today.
Last month, U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams ordered that striking United Mine Workers not impede the progress of Pittston Company coal trucks. Today, he began hearing the first group of cases of those charged with contempt for riding and rolling convoys. Roy Glover, the first to be tried, was found guilty, despite numerous witnesses in his behalf.
You had witnesses who testified, and they testified under oath. But he says, well, I don't believe those three guys, I believe this other guy. So, you know, you just never know what to expect when you come to court. You always expect the worst and hope for the best.
A second defendant was acquitted of one contempt charge, but not another. The trials are continuing tonight. Williams said that union witnesses provided him some of the most unbelievable testimony he had ever heard. He added that today's testimony contradicted that of union officials 2 weeks ago and stated that someone had committed perjury. And near Pittston operations, 6 more pickets were arrested in the 13-week strike by U.S. Marshals today.
What can you do? We're going to keep on fighting. There ain't no doubt about that. When we set out in this thing, we knew we was going to be fighting everybody in government, the courts. We're going to be fighting everybody, but we always have, and we're going to keep on fighting.
Those defendants found guilty of criminal contempt today for blocking the progress of coal trucks will be back here in federal court on Monday morning for sentencing. In Big Stone Gap, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center 5.
Drive up this road and see if he can maintain a 55-mile speed limit.
It seems like that the state police and the federal judges and everybody's against us.
Federal marshal even searched a little kid, and how's that kid going to feel about this? And see him, and it was his dad that they arrested, and handcuffed him and took him to jail. How does that look, the image?
The miners also say it's hard trying to get by day during the strike, but no matter what, they're going to stick it out for the duration.
Memorial period beginning Monday. President Rich Trumka today called for the 3-day shutdown of all UMWA represented bituminous coal operations east of the Mississippi.
He says it's an attempt to calm the volatile situation that exists in the coal fields. Trumka also says he hopes to end the disruption of the entire coal industry caused, quote, by the actions of one renegade coal company. West Virginia's coal producer...
A West Virginia coal company dismissed 28 employees for violating the no-strike clause of its contract with UMW. The company canceled a formal hearing of the firings after 2,000 union members blocked.
It's told a rally of about 2,000 miners in Logan, West Virginia, that the union will win the battle against Pittston if they stand together. The rally comes one day after UMW President Richard Trumka announced a union-sanctioned 3-day memorial period. Westmoreland Coal Company workers are exempt from the walkout because they use their Memorial Days in an April show of support for striking miners. Virginia coal truck driver has sworn out 2 warrants against union organizer Marty Hudson. The truck driver claims Hudson pointed a loaded pistol at him in late June. Union officials say the charges are ridiculous and say anyone can swear out a warrant. Hudson is vacationing in Florida and couldn't be reached for comment.
Yesterday's announcement by UMW President Richard Trumka that the union will take a sanctioned 3-day memorial period starting Monday. This is the first time miners have had a UMW sanction to protest Pittston since the Wildcat strikes began in mid-June. All UMW workers east of the Mississippi River have been asked to stay away from work Monday through Wednesday, except those at Westmoreland Coal Company. Westmoreland miners use their Memorial Days in April. President of Pittston Coal Group says his company will vigorously challenge complaints issued against Pittston by the National Labor Relations Board. Mike Odom says the allegations of unfair labor practices are false both factually and legally. Those allegations stem from hundreds of charges filed by the United Mine Workers Association since January. Odom says he's convinced that after the evidence has been presented, the UMW strike will no longer be seen as an unfair labor practice strike, but an economic strike to boost the union's collective bargaining goals.
From the McClure warehouse, a facility used to house strike replacement workers. The explosion shattered windows in the warehouse and in homes across the street.
The windows all around her, and if it wasn't for the cover that she was underneath, it'd have cut her all to pieces.
Pittston Coal Group President Mike Odom says he thinks the UMW planted the dynamite to intimidate the company.
We're not doing this. It's agents and representatives of United Mine Workers. I'm convinced of that. This is their tradition. They always disavow any knowledge.
First person to be convicted of involvement in the rolling roadblocks. The convoys were designed to slow traffic around the Clinchfield operations as part of the United Mine Workers strike against the Pittston Coal Group. The roadblocks were forbidden by U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams. Glover was arrested while driving 15 miles per hour with several coal trucks behind him. He was charged with contempt of court. More cases are being heard in Big Stone Gap today. In the strike communications trailer, when the explosion hit just before dawn on Hazel Mountain, a short time later, there was a second blast in the front yard of a coal truck driver in Dant. No arrests have been made.
Owned office trailer and another in an employee's front yard. Pittston Company President Mike Odom said today the recent explosions and continued roving convoys are an indication the miners are escalating the strike.
Second time in a week that we've had explosions at company property that have had anywhere from minor to significant damage. This is the 4th time we've had explosive devices go off in the private residences of people that either work for us or work for someone else that's doing business with us.
Odom also blamed the strike on UMWA President Rich Trumka. Odom said Trumka has turned his back on his own people.
Mr. Trumka personally negotiated that contract 18 months ago with the BCOA, and now he's turning his back on it. He's injuring his reputation, the credibility of the union. He's injuring their funds that depend on production.
Odom says since the strike began, Pittston coal trucks have received 2,000 flat tires and 600 broken windshields due to the strike-related violence. Well, meanwhile, for work, today was the deadline, but UMWA President Rich Trumka asked for a 3-day extension. Also, Westmoreland Coal Company has announced it will not be able to meet some of its overseas shipments due to the coal strike. 7 of Westmoreland's overseas customers have been informed that unless production resumes this week, Westmoreland will be 165,000 tons short of its customers' orders. Dixon tank lines are now honoring picket lines manned by striking miners from Charleston, West Virginia. 11 Teamsters from Charleston extended their strike to the Kingsport tank line last week after effectively shutting down the Charleston operation. The United Teamsters spokesman refused to be interviewed today, but did confirm the employees at the Kingsport operation are honoring the picket lines.
Moving in slow-moving convoys to block Pittston Coal Group trucks, while state and federal authorities loaded a bus with at least 20 more strikers arrested from the convoys. Judge Glenn Williams handed down sentences ranging from 3 days to 3 months. A 3-month jail sentence was ordered for Roy Glover. Union leaders called it unfair.
He was given 3 months, and at this point in time, I don't know that he's even been convicted of impeding traffic. He was given a ticket, and and then the judge sentenced him based on, I guess, him thinking that he was guilty and hearing the evidence. So it's a situation that nationally I'm concerned about.
3-day jail sentences suspended from 30 days were given to 2 others. A 4th was found not guilty. New arrests will bring more court action. Contract employee are the targets of the latest bombings in Virginia's coal fields. No one was injured early today when a bomb went off in the yard of a home in Russell County. 2 more bombs damaged Pittston communication equipment a few miles away. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell has more.
The homemade bomb that exploded here left a hole in the play yard where coal truck driver Jackie Mead's 2 young daughters play. Evidence indicates gunpowder had been packed in a medicine bottle. The explosion follows other incidents of threats and vandalism at this home. 2 more bombs incapacitated radio communication equipment housed in trailers on Pittston property. Company officials say the motive is clear.
Obviously, to limit the amount of communications that we have throughout our operations. If they can isolate an area, they have an opportunity to move in and render destruction and personal property damage and violence on that facility, and they're incommunicado. They can't call for help.
Union leaders say they are continuing to urge peace to striking miners and have no reason to believe strikers are involved in the explosion.
I don't even know anything about the situation, but I don't know of any proof or anything that our people did anything. There's been a lot of things that's happened, and they said our people did it, but I don't think anybody's been picked up, anybody's been convicted of anything.
It's unclear what type of explosives were used at the remote trailer sites, but witnesses reported evidence of timing devices. In Russell County, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
Workers in Virginia were supposed to return to work today, but did not because of picket lines. Westmoreland workers were told not to observe a 3-day memorial period called by the UMW for all union companies in the East. Union officials say the picket lines were not authorized, and they are investigating.
The firm guarding non-union coal mines.
A judge today ruled that Knuckles security personnel cannot be evicted from a Dunbar hotel. But as Sheila Gray reports, that doesn't mean the end of efforts to make them leave.
Members of at least 25 different labor unions, including the United Mine Workers, were back at their posts in front of the Travelodge Motel, now the temporary home of about 40 guards from Knuckles Security. The Cincinnati-based firm is protecting the non-union Appalachian Mining Company, and laborers want them gone.
We just don't think that people in West Virginia need these out-of-state strikebreakers here doing this kind of business. We feel strongly about it, and we intend to stay and try to help the miners solve this problem.
We're not strikebreakers. We're a security specialty team hired to protect the property and the equipment of a mining company, and in no way are we strikebreakers.
Hotel officials took Knuckles Company to court when picketers and passers-by began their protest, and business began hurting. But a judge told them they can seek no further restraining orders against the security firm. There's a sign in the window here. It says, "This building built with 100% union labor." Apparently the only comment from hotel officials. Knuckles was asked to leave the Charleston House Holiday Inn last month. He did, but he says he doesn't hold it against the unions.
I have nothing against the union. As long as there's unions, I'll remain in business.
And as long as his business is here, he says, this is where he'll stay. And these picketers probably will too. Sheila Gray, WSAZ News Center 3, Dunbar.
Guards injured today in violent eruptions today in Fayette County. At the entrance to Appalachian Mine at Boomer, 150 protesters converged on company property. 2 vans, a truck, and a car were overturned. State police made 1 arrest and say more are expected. Meanwhile, a convoy of 6 coal trucks running out of Elk Run Coal Company dwindled to 3 by the time it reached a Kanawha County loading dock. Truckers say they heard several gunshots as they came out of a Prenter Hollow. 1 truck's radiator was shot. 2 others were disabled by road jacks that flattened their tires. And for the first time, hidden protesters bombarded the trucks not only with rocks, but with paint, a new tactic to block drivers' vision.
Today. In Gdansk, Bush renewed his pledge to help the Poles redeem their shattered economy and seek greater political freedoms.
It is in your power to help end the division of Europe. I can think of no finer or more capable people with whom to entrust this mission. And just as the son of Poland has shown the world the heights of spiritual leadership in the Vatican, so the people of Poland can show the world what a free people with commitment and energy can accomplish.
Thousands of people gathered to hear the president's speech in the Gdansk shipyards. His remarks came in an emotional ceremony at the monument to slain Solidarity workers at the Lenin shipyards. The founder of the Solidarity movement, Lech Wałęsa, accompanied the president. Coal miners are vowing to keep up a vigil around the clock at the Bristol, Virginia jail. That's where miner Roy Glover has been jailed to begin serving a 3-month sentence for impeding traffic on coal field roads. Protesters say Glover's sentence is unfair.
I mean, you get caught drunk driving. You won't get that. You kill somebody while you're drunk driving a vehicle. You won't get 3 months out of it.
Sheriff Marshal Honecker says the protesters are causing no problem and he has offered them assistance.
All we said was that we have public bathrooms and we have drinking fountains and Coke machine and that type thing, and that they're available to them inside the jail.
It's not known if Glover will serve his entire sentence in Bristol.
Negotiations were in full swing this afternoon in Southwest Virginia as hundreds of striking coal miners gathered to welcome 19 miners to freedom after being arrested yesterday. Those same miners are also protesting a 3-month prison sentence handed out yesterday to a miner who was impeding traffic. If there were any doubts about the UMWA's determination to continue the 3-month-old strike against Pittston, those doubts were laid to rest today in Abingdon, where hundreds of miners poured into the streets protesting yesterday's 3-month jail sentence for striking miner. Many attending today called the Virginia court system unjust.
We have to keep the faith for the people and keep the people going. And, you know, 3 months, that's a long time for an impeding traffic ticket, which he's not even been convicted of yet.
Stump says there is no turning back, and the union will continue civil disobedience, while support from other unions continues to pour in.
We want to keep this civil resistance peaceful. That way, the communities are still with us. All of the labor organizations are joining in with us.
The miners continued their chants in hopes of gaining support from those passing by. And as 19 more jailed miners were released from the U.S. District Court around 1 today, emotions again overflowed. Stump also indicated Governor Gerald Baliles could have acted quicker by offering help in the 3-month-old strike. He says he's disappointed with the way Baliles is using state troopers.
Trooper cars in front of caravans, in the middle of caravans of trucks, and behind caravans of trucks. Now, if that is not escorting, I don't know what the hell escorting would be. I mean, that's just as clear escorting as it can get. And the governor's the one that's doing that, and he said he wasn't going to.
Governor Baliles has written an official letter to both Pittston and UMWA officials seeking a meeting next week with all parties concerned.
Trumka has accepted Governor Baliles' request to resume negotiations, but Pittston Coal Group hasn't yet made up its mind. Frank Jones has more.
The scene outside the Moss No. 3 processing plant is quite a different one from weeks past. The streets have been filled with convoys trying to halt coal shipments into Pittston's plants. But hefty fines and even a few jail sentences issued by U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams have apparently been capturing the attention of striking miners.
If you get on the highway, if you're doing anything less than 30 miles an hour through this area here, you know, they'll pull you over and give you a ticket.
Since the strike began April 5th, several attempts at the bargaining table have been unsuccessful by both sides. But Virginia Governor Gerald Belial says it's time to give it another try.
President Trump could agree to meet with Paul Douglas at any time, any place. And they haven't agreed to do so. So I don't know whether there's any chance of me negotiations anytime soon or not.
I think we showed we tried. They just never did show that they want a contract. What Pittston wants is to bust the union.
In the past, Pittston officials have maintained future bargaining would be futile.
I believe this is the first request that we've had from a governor or from an official who has requested that we go back to the same format with the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service taking charge as they were before. So certainly we will be considering it, and we'll have a response later.
Governor Belial says he's hopeful the two sides can soon return to the bargaining table and try to resolve their differences. Until then, he says he'll continue to support Virginia State Police in their efforts in trying to carry out the law. A law that, from the looks of things, appears to be working. Frank Jones, Eyewitness News 11, Carbo, Virginia.
Their supporters set up camp outside the Bristol, Virginia jail today, where fellow strikers are being held for violating a judge's orders. Roy Glover is serving a 90-day sentence for his part in allegedly trying to impede traffic in the coal fields. UMW District 28 President Jackie Stump visited Glover and said he was in good spirits. Evident in Kingsport, where members of the Teamsters Union at Kingsport's Mason-Dixon tank lines are still honoring picket lines of the West Virginia Teamsters who have brought their battle to the Tri-Cities. Picketers from the Charleston, West Virginia Mason-Dixon plant were authorized by the National Union to extend their lines to Kingsport. Even though Kingsport employees have no problem with their contract, they will continue to honor picket lines manned by the West Virginia members. They have not had a contract since 1988.
Trumka today announced the UMW has agreed to a request by Virginia Governor Gerald Belial that Pittston and the UMWA return to the bargaining table. Trumka said he agreed with Belial that Trumka and Pittston CEO Paul Douglas should be the principal parties involved in the talks under the direction of the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service. Trumka said government can do much to either hinder or help the process. So far, there has been no word from Pittston officials as to whether they will meet Trumka at the bargaining table. Also, the United Mine Workers Union today extended a sanctioned work stoppage for 2 more days. The memorial period is to allow Pittston more time to respond to Governor Belial's request for the two sides to resume negotiations.
Being shut down for at least 2 more days. The United Mine Workers Union is extending the work stoppage in support of striking Pittston miners through the rest of the week. The decision affects about 60,000 miners who work for union companies east of the Mississippi. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell has more.
The union says the massive work stoppage, bringing lots of out-of-state miners to Virginia's coal fields, will be extended to give Pittston time to consider Governor Gerald Belial's request for the two sides to return to federally mediated contract bargaining. Pittston President Mike Odom doesn't appear optimistic.
Why return to the bargaining table with an entity that is conducting itself in bad faith in the rest of the industry? I mean, that's critical. There's a lot of things that have got to be weighed here.
Hundreds of coal miners off their jobs in other states have been here in Southwest Virginia. Many say they'll be reluctant to leave as long as the strike continues.
I think I should stay out until the Pittston employees get what they deserved. I think every one of our members should have an opportunity to see what's going on down here. They need to see it. They need to have their children to see it so that they can see what their fathers and their mothers have to go through. Labor needs to see this.
A Catholic nun is among the latest group to be arrested for impeding traffic on coal roads. Sister Bernadette Kinney from St. Mary's Hospital was taken into custody from a motorhome medical supply unit in Dickinson County. Meanwhile, Pittston's president is suspicious of an announcement that a congressional subcommittee on labor will investigate the strike.
I think it's another political approach by Mr. Trumka to deflect attention away from the troubles the UMWA is having in the coal industry.
In Lebanon, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center.
Pittston mine. And even when fatigue sets in, the ladies say they plan to stay.
As long as it takes, as long as he's in here, we'll be here day and night.
What they put the men through, the women can at least show the support.
While these demonstrators say they plan to stay here until Glover is set free, they say this fight is only a small one in the overall battle.
It's made us feel like a family and united. It makes us more determined than ever to fight and to win.
It's worth it to show that we care and to let the world know that the injustice that is being done in Southwest Virginia.
And as passers-by join in on the sit-down, it seems the world just might be listening. Stephanie Boyd, Eyewitness News 11, Britain.
It's work stoppage to support those miners who are striking the Pittston Coal Group. The two-day extension will affect about 60,000 miners. And out on the picket lines today, a nun was arrested. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
The union says the massive work stoppage bringing lots of out-of-state miners to Virginia's coal fields will be extended to give Pittston time to consider Governor Gerald Belial's request for the two sides to return to federally mediated contract bargaining. Pittston President Mike Odom doesn't appear optimistic.
Why return to the bargaining table with an entity that is conducting itself in bad faith in the rest of the industry? I mean, that's critical. There's a lot of things that have got to be weighed here.
Hundreds of coal miners off their jobs in other states have been here in Southwest Virginia. Many say they'll be reluctant to leave as long as the strike continues.
I think I should stay out until the Pittston employees get what they deserved. I think every one of our members should have an opportunity to see what's going on down here. They need to see it. They need to have their children to see it so that they can see what their fathers and their mothers have to go through. Labor needs to see this.
A Catholic nun is among the latest group to be arrested for impeding traffic on coal roads. Sister Bernadette Kinney from St. Mary's Hospital was taken into custody from a motorhome medical supply unit in Dickinson County. Meanwhile, Pittston's president is suspicious of an announcement that a congressional subcommittee on labor will investigate the strike.
I think it's another political approach by Mr. Trumka to deflect attention away from the troubles that UMWA is having in the coal industry.
In Lebanon, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center.
Who was arrested was released from jail tonight on an unsecured bond. Workers have been meeting weekly and holding support rallies. And as News Center 5's Rhonda Bentley reports, with their strike activities limited by court orders, UMW members are talking about their next move.
We'll build a mighty union, we shall not be moved.
Wednesday's rally was full of union spirit, but that spirit was broken when a group of miners began voicing their frustrations about replacement workers.
Because some folks are a little upset, let's do what Cesar Chavez told us. All right, here we go.
The courts have limited strike activities, and rallies like this one gives the union members time to plan strategy for their next move.
We're never planning on quitting here. We're going to be here for whatever length of time it takes to win this strike.
For more than a month now, UMW members have walked off their jobs at other companies to show support for Pittston employees. And Wednesday's rally proved that point as striking miners from 5 states were present.
And we try to, at least weekly, we try to daily keep them as informed as we can, but at least this during the weekly, it helps a lot, you know.
Despite rallies and the ongoing strike, coal is still moving out of the mountains of Southwest Virginia. Rhonda Bentley, News Center 5.
Entrance to a Kentucky coal facility this morning and began throwing rocks. Kentucky State Police say at least one person was injured. The miners assembled about 6:30 this morning, sealing off Kentucky 468 at Sidney in Pike County.
Right-of-way near the LK mining complex. This is the 100th day of the strike against the Pittston Coal Group, and this shack has been here all during that period of time. And despite a Logan Circuit judge's ruling, these mine workers say it's not coming down. The miners gathered just over a mile away at DeHue School. They say they will stay. A meeting called this afternoon also brought good news. Victory for the union from the National Labor Relations Board, which found Pittston guilty of unfair labor practices on several counts.
Well, it's going to please everybody. It just shows you that this company's got no intentions of negotiating with us in good faith. They've got no intentions of trying to break our union.
The Labor Board has issued these complaints, and it helps our cause.
But these men, unlike the Wildcatters, are striking directly against Pittston. No word yet on when or whether the court will send state police to dismantle the picket shack. But when it happens, it will mean a certain confrontation. A Floyd County, Kentucky miner is back. Her ordeal is yet another sign that things are only getting worse.
They let these people that's out here selling pot, crack, and everything else, they let them out of jail for no reason hardly at all. And they put our guys in there for doing nothing, driving us down the road. There's something wrong with the law system.
Tim Cable, Eyewitness News 11, Abingdon.
Several union members charged with the same offense as Sister Kinney had preliminary hearings today. John Sturgill, William Halcomb, and James Boggs, all from Kentucky, face a misdemeanor fine of $500 or 6 months in jail if convicted in their trials, which are slated for August 3rd. Meanwhile, the waiting game continues as to whether the Pittston Coal Company will go back to the bargaining table with the union anytime soon. Virginia Governor Gerald Baliles has issued a plea to both sides to resume negotiations, and UMW President Richard Trumka responded favorably to that request earlier this week. But Pittston Coal Group President Mike Odom says company officials are still considering the governor's plea and would respond at a later date. Odom, who called off his daily press conference to attend to other matters today, says the company must evaluate the entire situation before a response can be made to the
bring things, calm things down, and maybe get our people back to work and provide some sort of a calm atmosphere.
The union has filed an appeal.
And for the first time since that strike began, mass arrests were made today in West Virginia. Sheila Gray reports from Boone County.
Crowd estimates ranged from 400 to 800. Whatever the number, miners and their supporters almost spilled from the sides of a bridge on Route 5 they say is unsafe. That bridge is crossed every day by non-union coal trucks hurrying out of Jew Hollow, at times amidst gunfire and rock throwing. Protesters say the trucks break the law.
We've been up here for going on 5 weeks complaining about the coal truck drivers, the weight limit on this bridge. We did have a 12-ton weight limit sign. When the truck started running, it's gone. The bridge is totally gone underneath it. You can look at the pictures we have. We want our sign back, and we want it enforced.
So this day, the protesters broke the law. Shortly after 8, they sat down in the road. Swarms of state troopers were sent to the scene. They weren't able to cross the path of the protesters, but after some deliberation, they began making arrests.
When you're arrested and taken down there, everybody, please stand and listen. You ask for a jury trial and ask to be released on your own recognizance. Everybody understand that?
Very few walked to police vans. Most were carried or dragged and emerged from the incident with cuts and bruises. But state police say they didn't use undue force. Protesters chose not to walk to the vehicles, and the state police won't take the blame.
We didn't put the glass on the road. We didn't throw the bottles out there and the jack rocks and the rocks. You know, actually, we were there trying to protect them as well. You know, there could have been some car come up the road and run over top of them while they were sitting there in the road.
Once loaded into vans, the prisoners were taken to the Boone County Jail, where they would have a long wait, then be fingerprinted, photographed, and processed. They were charged with obstructing traffic, and the miners say they will fight those charges and go to trial, all 277 of them. They say they'll also continue their protest at Jew Hollow, which could mean more arrests. Sheila Gray, WSAZ News Center 3, Boone.
All around it. There's 8 or 10, 11 highway patrol around that hill. And the woman was doing nothing but driving down the road. And they swarmed that thing just like maggots around it.
According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, Sister Kinney signed her own $10,000 recognizance bond and faces a July 26th arraignment. Strikers say her ordeal is yet another sign that things are only getting worse.
They let these people that's out here selling pot, crack, and everything else, they let them out of jail for no reason hardly at all. And they put our guys in there for doing nothing, driving us down the road. There's something wrong with the law system.
Tim Cable, Eyewitness News 11, Abingdon.
That's our job. I've got 17 years in United Mine Workers, and I don't want to see it go under. Because if they go under, I've not got no pension to look forward to.
You feel like that this strike with these people in this state is that important nationwide?
Yes, sir, I do.
Like the Virginia pickets, those from Alabama say they will maintain the vigil anywhere their union brothers are jailed. As the strike against the Pittston Coal Group continues by the United Mine Workers Union, a federal judge is giving the union a 2-week cooling off period. After that, the court will review violations of a restraining order. This review has been delayed several weeks to give the National Labor Relations Board a chance to respond to union motions. The union already has been fined nearly $1 million for violating a federal court order.
Every time that there's a jailing like there was Monday, every time there's fairly severe fines, that it's problems in the coal fields for our members. I mean, they've been out in protest. They have very serious, genuine concerns about what's happening to their union, what's happening to Pittston strikers, and it's a real problem in the rest of the country.
Many of the union demonstrations have been directed at the court for sentencing a striking miner to 90 days in jail for impeding traffic.
By and large, behind a lot of the thinking is the fact that there's a recognition that the fines and the jailings have kind of inflated and fired up our members in the field, and I think this is a very positive step, and hopefully this will help calm things down, and maybe get our people back to work and provide some sort of a calm atmosphere.
The union has filed an appeal in the case as well. State police say there were no injuries reported in that blast. Meanwhile, 2 Hamden Coal Company employees in West Virginia were struck by shotgun blasts this morning. Hamden Coal in Mingo County has been the scene of daily violence since wildcat coal strikes hit the state last month. The 2 unidentified employees were flown to nearby Williamson Memorial Hospital. One employee was hit in the chest by at least 13 to 14 pieces of buckshot, while the other was struck in the shoulder. No arrests have been made.
For a meeting between himself, the United Mine Workers, and Pittston Coal officials. U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams has found himself embroiled in the strike through lawsuits against the union by the National Labor Relations Board. In a letter to Pittston Chief Paul Douglas and Union President Rich Trumka, Williams has requested a meeting in Duffield, Virginia for Tuesday morning. Williams says he's deeply concerned there was no ongoing effort to settle the strike. The judge says neither he nor the public know the issues, and he is not interested in past arguments between the union and company. Williams says that Douglas and Trumka do not have to appear personally, but wants representatives who can speak for their superiors. The judge, who has fined and jailed the union and its members, says neither side can afford not to show up. He adds no response to the letter is necessary. If no one shows up, that will be fine, but if only one side appears, Williams says he and the public will know who is refusing to talk. The discussion will be non-binding if it occurs. A car bomb exploded this morning on a vehicle parked at the Pittston Coal Group's Lebanon offices. State police say a company employee parked the car in the lot around 4 a.m. The homemade black powder bomb was attached to the rear axle of the car and was triggered by a timing device. It exploded shortly before 9 o'clock.
From our information and from examination, it was determined that the vehicle was equipped with the device when it was parked.
So far, police have no suspects in the case, but Frank says the investigation is continuing.
Well, these are hard to solve, but we're going to get lucky and we're going to make some arrests. I feel quite confident.
2 other explosive devices were also found in Dickinson County, Virginia today. Neither exploded, but one resulted in the closing of State Routes 652 and 63. To 90 days in jail for contempt of court, will be out next week. Roy Glover was sent to jail Monday on criminal contempt charges, but today, the same judge who sentenced him reduced the term to 10 days. Judge Glenn Williams sent Glover to jail following the contempt conviction. Glover was arrested by federal marshals last week following a state police summons for impeding coal truck traffic. Glover's case created a backlash of demonstrations in the 14-week-long strike with Pittston Coal. Even with the sentence reduction, Glover has received the longest sentence of those marshals began arresting last week.
25 to 30 of them jumped him in a blind curve. And one of them jumped up on the truck and told him to dump his load right where he was, and broke out the driver's window and then struck him several times in the rib area.
Addington is a big operation, and the superintendent there says the firm needs to haul coal.
Our miners has asked us not to haul coal, and I don't want to see one of these truckers get hurt, and we're not looking for any trouble and don't want any.
Moore says he's asked for protection from the Sheriff's Department just in case the miners come back.
A Boone County hollow blocked by protesters yesterday was more quiet than expected today. After a round of gunfire early this morning, the hills were silent, and state police were prepared to haul people off to jail. Sheila Gray has the story.
At a staging area at Sherman High School, dozens of state troopers and conservation officers prepared for more mass arrests, but they never came. Near dawn, Elk Run coal trucks were reportedly shot at and pelted with rocks when they came out of Predator Hollow. Later, state troopers made 2 turn around to avoid further trouble. Troopers were on standby all day as about 100 protesters returned to the scene of yesterday's mass arrests. They say they'll keep their vigil there until coal trucks travel the road more slowly and weight limits are reestablished on a Route 5 bridge.
They fly up through here, and we got children all up and down through here. We've already had to send our children to our parents to watch. And like the incident today, they was trying to shove the mailbox, and the troopers not doing nothing about it but stopping us, giving us fines, and taking us to jail.
There were no arrests today and no citations. Late this afternoon, a convoy of coal trucks crawled up the hollow under watch by state police. Although there were a few tense moments, the non-union trucks made it back to Elk Run without incident. Sheila Gray, WSAZ News Center 3, Boone County.
Planning to crack down on violence in the coal fields. U.S. Attorney Mike Carey says property and people must be protected, regardless of their affiliation in this strike. The FBI is investigating the destruction of a coal tipple in Raleigh County and attempts to damage coal trucks or injure drivers. It is a federal crime to injure or even attempt to injure coal or other interstate commerce cargo. Violators could face 5 years in prison. Add a reckless disregard for human life, and the maximum is 20 years. If someone dies as a result, the maximum penalty is life in prison. The people who killed Hayes West in eastern Kentucky were prosecuted under this federal statute.
Years ago, for a memorial break allowed in mine contracts. Before the break, more than 30,000 miners had gone in the Wildcat strike in support of 1,900 strikers at the Pittston Coal Company.
1,000 miners on Wildcat strikes in support of Pittston strikers' return to work. Union officials said about 15,250 miners in Indiana, Alabama, and Illinois decided to return to work, beginning with shifts at midnight last night and continuing through the weekend. More are expected to follow over the weekend. The 1,900 miners at Pittston's operations in Virginia, West Virginia, and Kentucky will remain on the picket lines. Looking for answers into yesterday's bombing incident at Pittston Coal Group's headquarters. Authorities say a crude time bomb exploded around 9:30 yesterday morning, destroying the car of a striking miner who just returned to work. A state police spokesman says the bomb was made of blasting powder and was taped to the rear axle of the worker's vehicle. There were no injuries in connection with that incident. Meanwhile, one of the striking United Mine workers jailed for allegedly impeding traffic in the Virginia coal fields will be able to go home Tuesday. Yesterday, U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams suspended all but 10 days of a 90-day sentence issued to Roy Glover. Earlier this week, hundreds of striking miners turned out at the Bristol, Virginia jail in protest of Williams' original ruling. On Monday, Williams issued the 90-day sentence after Glover was arrested by state police for reportedly disrupting the flow of traffic. Williams says he decided to reduce Glover's sentence since the number of arrests in the coal fields dropped dramatically this week.
Wildcat strikes began. 2 non-union truck drivers were seriously hurt when they wrecked trying to get through gunfire and rock throwing in Predator Hollow. One rear-ended the other when a car was shoved into their path. Tuesday, and Predator Hollow residents took their protest to the Boone County Courthouse. They're fighting citations for impeding traffic on the road running out of Elk Run Coal past their homes. They say the road's too rough to travel any faster than 20 miles per hour, even though the speed limit, which isn't posted, is 55. The protest of that road and a Route 5 bridge came to a head later in the week when more than 400 miners and supporters sat down and blocked traffic. It was the first incident of civil disobedience in West Virginia since the Pittston strike began, and 277 people were arrested. All of them were hauled into the Boone County Courthouse where they asked for trials and were released. Meanwhile, the West Virginia State Police were put on 24-hour standby, and Friday they prepared for more arrests, but they made none. Elk Run coal officials reported more gunfire and rock throwing near dawn Friday, but when reinforcements were called in, Predator Hollow became quiet. It was not, however, unoccupied. About 100 protesters returned to the scene of their arrest the day before. They continued their complaints about the bad road conditions and the speed of the coal trucks. And when a convoy of trucks showed up late in the afternoon, they crawled up the hollow under the watchful eyes of state troopers and under verbal siege by protesters. But the 5-day memorial period and the week ended without incident. Sheila Gray, WSAZ News Center 3, reporting.
West Virginia and Western Kentucky.
Walkouts last month have returned to work. United Mine Workers Union officials say miners are back to work at the Westmoreland Coal Company. Sam Church, a member of the union's District 28 Executive Committee, says no pickets were in front of the Westmoreland Company early this morning. Soviet coal miners in western Siberia are still at a standstill, and strikers are demanding economical and political concessions. Bob Abernathy reports.
The strike that began with these miners a week ago has now spread to 9 cities and up to 100,000 workers, costing millions a day in lost production. The miners want better living conditions and more local control of what they do. The Kuznets Basin in western Siberia produces about 1/6 of all this country's coal. Most of the demands of the original strikers have been met, but apparently officials did not explain to other workers that the settlement applied to them too, so they walked out. Strikes are not illegal here, and although the economic cost of this one is enormous, Soviet television and newspapers have reported the strike with surprising sympathy. The official line has been that when workers want more local control of their affairs, less control from Moscow, they're demanding exactly the kind of reform Mikhail Gorbachev wants too. Bob Abernathy, NBC News, Moscow.
He invited both sides to meet with him tomorrow. Judge Glenn Williams, who again today levied hefty fines against the UMW, says he hopes the meeting will move both sides closer to the bargaining table to end the 4-month-old strike. UMW President Richard Trumka has confirmed he will attend, and Pittston spokeswoman Susan Copeland says company President Mike Odom will also be present. Despite the ongoing coal strike in Southwest Virginia, Yates says the authority is determined to diversify the economic base starting at home.
And I'll also seek the advice, guidance, and support from some key community and business leaders, including all the members of the Coalfield Authority and other local and regional business leaders. And I'll also be talking with those folks from the private sector that have contributed to our effort here.
The Coalfield Authority serves 8 areas in Southwest Virginia, including Scott County. Workers and Pittston officials have agreed to resume discussions that could lead to full-scale negotiations to end a 4-month-old strike. Good evening, everyone. I'm Betty Payne.
And I'm John Cleary. Thanks for being with us. For the first time in more than a month, there appears to be some daylight that could lead to an end in the 4-month-old UMW Pittston Coal strike. Today, at the request of a federal judge, the two sides met in Duffield, Virginia, and agreed to resume discussions. However, while that may be the move in the right direction, there is still a sea of differences between the two sides. After 4 hours, with the help of U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams, the UMW and Pittston Coal Group have agreed to resume discussions with the intent of bringing both sides back to full-scale, face-to-face negotiations to end the 4-month-old strike. Williams praised UMW President Rich Trumka for showing up today, but Trumka was disappointed that Pittston Chairman Paul Douglas didn't.
I'm obviously disappointed that Mr. Douglas would not come and join in the process. They've said he won't join in the process. I will lead our people back tomorrow. We wanted the negotiation process to start, and Pittston wasn't willing to go that far.
No bargaining positions were discussed at today's meeting, but it was agreed that both sides will be allowed to continue their initial complaints that led to this strike. And it was clear, while the agreement was reached, there are many differences that still have to be resolved.
The system of labor-management relationship is not conducive to stability. Hopefully, this will be able to be an example of that.
Trumka continued his thoughts by stating the strike is still a matter of jobs and security.
We have 4,000 miners in this area that are laid off. A satisfactory solution would be not one which gives them no hope and no jobs, but rather one that gives them hope and gives them the opportunity for jobs as they become available.
Odom says the strike is a matter of change, and the union must realize that.
They're just going to have to recognize the changes in the dynamics of the coal industry in which we operate. That's what we're hoping that we can be a partner with them in those changes.
Trumka had hoped the two sides could have a labor expert take part in the talks if the federal mediation doesn't work, but that proposal was rejected by Pittston.
They're the professional entity that's congressionally mandated under the Department of Labor to resolve these disputes. That confidentiality is there for the protection of both parties.
Those discussions are expected to get underway tomorrow in Duffield or as soon as a federal mediator can arrive. UMW President Richard Trumka says he is ready to get the talks underway. A coal strike is also causing problems in the Soviet Union. The strike there has been underway for a week in the Kuzbath region, where several economic losses threaten to paralyze the Siberian coal fields. Now the labor dispute has spread to the Donbass region of the Ukraine, the nation's leading coal-producing area. Many of the strikers' demands for improved working and living conditions have been met by the government, but demands for certain political concessions may meet more opposition. The strike is the most severe labor dispute in the Soviet Union in decades.
The coal group strike will be resolved. A federal judge has helped convince both the company and the United Mine Workers to resume contract talks, this time in Southwest Virginia. The agreement is the first step toward a possible settlement since talks broke off over a month ago. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
I was convinced Federal Judge Glenn Williams has succeeded in getting the presidents of the coal company and the UMW to meet face-to-face for the first time ever and to agree to resume talks aimed at ending the strike.
And I guess we considered a step is better than no step at all.
We're obviously taking what happened today. We're taking it at face value. They're going to return with good faith, and they're going to demonstrate the flexibility that we've heard about. There's nothing else that occurred.
The talks may start as soon as Wednesday at the Duffield Ramada Inn. Pittston is insisting each party occupy separate rooms this time, with the federal mediator carrying contract proposals from one to the other.
But it was time for a different approach to trying to take away the acrimonious atmosphere and give a new way to try to resolve this dispute.
Instead of us taking a position out and them taking a position out and saying, here's our position and here's your position, they don't match. What I've suggested is we ask them for their needs. What do you need? Not what do you want, what do you need? And they ask me, what do we need? What do our people in this area need for an agreement?
Judge Williams was drawn into the strike from contempt of court cases stemming from union efforts to stop Pittston's production. He says he felt compelled to push for resumed talks, not because of the court cases, but because the dispute is turning neighbor against neighbor in coal-filled communities.
The biggest thing is the division among people, animosity and divisiveness.
Whether or not this works to end the strike remains to be seen. If it doesn't, Judge Williams, at the union's request, will be making a list of alternative mediators. In Duffield, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
Is taking its toll in Southwest Virginia, and it spreads beyond the hardships of the miners and their families. News Center 5's John Mongol takes a look at businesses in Southwest Virginia.
With high unemployment and the uncertainty of the coal industry, there aren't many economic booms here in Dickinson County's seat. But as the strike between the United Mine Workers and Pittston Coal drags on, it becomes harder and harder for small businesses.
They don't know how long it's going to hold out, and it's more careful than they was before.
It's hurting me every day. I mean, I can hold out a little while, but speaking for the other businesses, I can't do that, but now I'm hurting.
It's hard on retailers now, but some of them have felt the economic pressure since the union's last contract expired.
I feel a difference now, but I've felt a difference for the last 2 years, not just now. Before they started, you know, the contract, they knew the contract was coming up, and most miners started economizing then.
Some sales have actually increased during the strike, such as the sale of camouflage clothing. But many of the merchants selling the Solidarity colors are donating part of that profit to the union. A storefront here in Clintwood looks the same as it would almost everywhere, except for one large difference. Almost every storefront has a sign of support for the United Mine Workers.
Because if they don't get this contract, our whole town goes down.
They're fighting for a cause, and I support them.
And apparently the striking miners and their families support their local businesses too. They're spending what money they have in their hometowns. In Clintwood, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center.
Judge Glenn Williams. Williams ordered Roy Glover to spend 30 days in jail for allegedly trying to slow traffic. But this weekend, Williams decided to suspend all but 10 days of that sentence.
The death for Roy and his family there, and you know, we're delighted that the judge looked at it, and our lawyers was able to go in and talk with him and make some motions and things to get Roy released. I mean, I think it's, especially for Roy and his family and for the people, I think it's a big boost.
Stump says Glovier's actions show that miners are willing to do whatever they have to get the contract they want. The officials and United Mine Workers representatives have agreed to return to the bargaining table. The two sides made that agreement today after meeting with U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams in Duffield, Virginia. Frank Jones has details.
After spending nearly 4 hours behind closed doors, U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams was finally able to accomplish his goal. A goal which resulted in Pittston officials agreeing to resume federal mediation with the United Mine Workers.
I deeply appreciate this effort that is being made, and I'm optimistic about it because I think these are intelligent people on each side, and they know the crisis that we're in, the needs that we have, and the need to move along.
Williams said he had no choice but to intervene after previous attempts with mediation were unsuccessful. Although both sides have agreed to hold bargaining talks under the same roof, each party will meet separately with the mediator. That was the request of Pittston officials.
I just felt that federal mediation was the appropriate agency, but it was time for a different approach to trying to take away the acrimonious atmosphere and give a new way to try to resolve this dispute.
I thought that we ought to have Paul Douglas and myself in those talks so that we could put aside all the past, look at what his needs were and look what our needs were, and try to make those needs meet. Disappointed that that's not going to happen.
Previous talks at the bargaining table broke off in June when the union claimed Pittston was only using the negotiations as a propaganda tool. Both sides are optimistic mediation will work this time.
You can't negotiate, you can't arrive at a settlement unless you're talking. We're talking, and that means you're closer. We'll see the sincerity of it, and I guess I've reserved judgment to see the sincerity and the bona fides of it.
Even though both sides are returning to the bargaining table, Trumka says the issues are still the same. And although he's optimistic, he says striking miners won't give up until they get what they're fighting for. Frank Jones, Eyewitness News 11, Duffield.
Bargaining and give and take between the parties. The final language, I guess you would say, is mine, but the ideas weren't mine.
What I've suggested is we ask them for their needs. What do you need? Not what do you want, what do you need? And they ask me, what do we need? What do our people in this area need for an agreement? And then we try to make those needs knit together.
Under the agreement, the mediator will meet with each side separately and deliver proposals to the other party.
Rock throwing and gunshots tainted the labor dispute again today in Boone County. But as Sheila Gray reports, this time they were aiming inside the cabs of non-union coal trucks.
Non-union Elk Run coal trucks have been pelted with rocks, sprayed with paint, and shot at during the past 2 weeks. Officials say this morning's violence is the most serious they've seen yet. The cabs of 2 trucks were shot into with what state police say were probably high-powered rifles. Elk Run's president says it doesn't get much more serious, but he won't stop running coal out of the hollow.
We've made commitments to customers. We don't have anything to do with this strike. We're operating no differently, as I said before, than we have before all this wildcat started.
Short says the state's not doing enough to protect his drivers. Meanwhile, Predator Hollow residents are still complaining that Elk Run coal trucks go too fast down their road, although they were traveling at speeds close to 10 miles per hour today. Protesters here at the mouth of the hollow say the coal trucks only obey the law when cameras are rolling. They say when the media is not here, the trucks speed down the hill and roll through the stop sign. Those protesters say they're concerned their kids won't be protected when they go back to school next month.
Local union leaders are trying another tactic to put pressure on Pittston Coal. At the District 17 headquarters in Charleston, miners rallied with anti-Paul Douglas signs. They're making plans to get Pittston shareholders to fire the company's president.
Dump Douglas! Dump Douglas! Dump Douglas!
UMW local President Frank Thurman says a committee of many different trade unions throughout the country will be formed to fight Pittston. He says this may affect union employers in the Kanawha Valley.
And I understand that if you dabble in stocks, such as the Pittston shareholders,
They also own stock in Monsanto and Carbide and a lot of these plants down here, and we want them to be real nervous because we're not going to give up on this Pittston strike.
They have tried to form a massive union committee before without much success. In another much smaller labor dispute, union picketers are protesting the construction of a St. Albans supermarket. Several members of laborers Local 1353 were outside the Food Max construction site in the St. Albans downtown area during rush hour this morning. They are protesting the hiring of non-union labor and an out-of-state contractor.
Virginia. Good evening, everyone. I'm Betty Payne.
And I'm Mark Wildman. Thanks for being with us. Officials from both Pittston Coal Group and the United Mine Workers finally sat down at the bargaining table. It's the first time in nearly 2 months the two sides have taken any steps to negotiate a contract. At stake are the pension benefits of hundreds of retired coal miners from Pittston, as well as job security and job opportunities for current miners. Under the agreement reached yesterday, Pittston and the UMW will negotiate from separate rooms with a federal mediator as the go-between. An ominous note was sounded even before negotiations began this morning. Richard Trumka, president of the Miners Union, claimed Pittston Coal president Mike Odom made some uncalled-for remarks on a morning network television program. Odom's statement was that the union is unflexible in its demands.
I think if that's a demonstration of their good faith, the process has little chance of succeeding. We're going to try to find out there what their needs are, not what their claims are.
We have an offer on the table that the union walked away from, and we're going to see if he has said he's flexible, and so we're going to see what he's got to say today.
But union spokesman Joe Corcoran said emphatically Pittston is the side that won't budge. Throughout the day, both Pittston and the UMW were tight-lipped on the contents of today's talks. But it was evident the underlying tone was the union's demand for Pittston CEO Paul Douglas to attend the negotiations.
He keeps talking about I have 13,000 employees. I represent 200,000 people in 2 countries. In auto negotiations, the presidents of GM, Ford, and people like that got involved, and they have hundreds of thousands of employees that they represent, but they were committed to settling.
Richard Trumka is turning over union negotiations to Vice President Cecil Roberts tomorrow. Farrell will continue as negotiator for Pittston. Trumka will return to Duffield next Tuesday when the board of directors for the International Miners Union holds its annual meeting at the Ramada Inn.
With area leaders from the coalfield counties of Southwest Virginia today. While no specific information was released concerning cuts in those counties, Belials is concerned about the future impact of the coal strike. John Cleary is on special assignment in Richmond and sends us this report.
As a result, many of the leaders today from Southwest Virginia who gathered with the governor reported their budgets could be cut by as much as 10%. Governor Belial says he is very concerned about the situation, not only now, but in the future.
If it ends in the relatively near future, the economic impact can be minimized. If it extends into the future, then we've got a different set of problems.
One area that could be hit hardest is education, and Belial says that would only make things worse on the future of the Virginia economic system.
And I think we all agree around this table that the way to produce a strengthened economy for Southwest Virginia is through education. And when cuts are made and education is affected, everyone suffers.
Governor Belial did announce one plan that is in the making that would go into effect after the strike is over, a post-strike marketing plan. Part of that plan is already underway in Lebanon, Virginia, with the help of the Coalfield Economic Development Authority.
We'll probably emphasize the more recent successes of manufacturing companies agreeing to locate in the region. As you know, we've got 3 that are in a process of up and running there now, and we think that'll be a major part of our strategy.
The governor will take the information gathered today and review it. There is a possibility of some state funding in the future to ease the financial stress. Governor Belial has also said no one is giving up on Southwest Virginia. Reporting in Richmond at the state capitol, John Cleary, WKPT News.
Off to a rocky start between the Pittston Coal Group and the United Mine Workers Union. As the talks with federal mediators began, the union was jolted with word that Pittston considers at least one key issue not subject to negotiation. News Hunter 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
Eventually, they may meet face-to-face, but for now, the company's negotiating team is in one room at the Duffield Ramada Inn. The union is in another next door, with President Richard Trumka personally involved for the first time in discussions with mediators. One immediate stumbling block is the company's refusal to reconsider removing itself from the 1950 Multi-Employer Benefit Trust Fund, considered a fundamental issue to the union.
We think it's time that he cut through all the dancing around and give us a proposal that shows his flexibility. And that proposal does not have us participate in the funds. That is not negotiable on our part.
How can they look the public in the face and say that I'm no longer responsible for the people who built the company? You're talking about people that have spent 40 and 50 years in the industry, retired before they even heard of Paul Douglas or heard of Mike Odom. These guys ride in out of nowhere in Greenwich and then tell the people who built the company to take a hike.
Odom says the company is looking for flexibility from the union. Trumka says Pittston has to make the first move.
I think the ball's in their court. They say they have all of these needs. I'm saying, prove it to me. Prove what you need. As soon as you prove it, I'll move to address your needs.
Pittston has made it clear that Paul Douglas, head of the parent company, will not get involved in these talks. Trumka keeps insisting he's necessary.
He's the CEO of the corporation. Moreover, we think it's a show of good faith. His being here yesterday would have said to everybody, Pittston wants to settle. His not being here said, it's not important to Pittston.
Trumka's involvement in the talks is expected to be short-lived unless Douglas changes his mind. In Duffield, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center.
The non-union coal hauler will go to the Russell County, Virginia grand jury. But the judge dismissed 7 charges of reckless driving and brandishing a firearm against Jesse James Meadows. Meadows was charged with hitting 3 United Mine Workers pickets with his truck on May 2nd. Rocks broke the windows in Meadows' truck and the coal truck driven by his son.
Show probable cause. They didn't have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and as a result of that, we did not present today all the evidence we have to introduce at the trial.
So you're optimistic he'll...
Very optimistic.
Meadows was knocked out by the rock which broke the back glass of his pickup. His son had a broken jaw as a result of a rock. In certifying the charges to the grand jury, the judge noted evidence in today's preliminary hearing was conflicting. Meadows' lawyer says he will ask that the trial be moved out of Russell County if Meadows is indicted. Jurors were back in state court today in Lebanon, Virginia. Circuit Court Judge Don McLaughlin began hearing evidence today on compliance with his injunction against the union. 2 months ago, the judge fined the union almost $3 million for blocking company coal trucks. Today's hearing is the first since the case was ordered back into state court from federal court. The injunction is based on Virginia's right-to-work law. Most of today's testimony came from state police who have been citing striking miners for impeding traffic on coal haul roads. The hearing will continue in Russell County Circuit Court tomorrow. Virginia counties met today with Virginia Governor Gerald Baliles to discuss the impact of the coal strike on the economy. Baliles says the state is reviewing its options, but is not considering any direct economic aid to the region.
Periods that we've had in Southwest Virginia. Of course, we depend on the coal industry, you know, to supply our jobs, and our servants' tax are down considerably, and we depend.
Even if it is through a federal mediator. This was the first day of talks between the union and Pittston in more than a month. And as News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports, they're already running into some trouble spots.
Eventually, they may meet face-to-face, but for now, the company's negotiating team is in one room at the Duffield Ramada Inn. The union is in another next door, with President Richard Trumka personally involved for the first time in discussions with mediators. One immediate stumbling block is the company's refusal to reconsider removing itself from the 1950 Multi-Employer Benefit Trust Fund, considered a fundamental issue to the union.
We think it's time that he cut through all the dancing around and give us a proposal that shows his flexibility. And that proposal does not have us participate in the funds. That is not negotiable on our part.
How can they look the public in the face and say that I'm no longer responsible for the people that built the company? You're talking about people that have spent 40 and 50 years in the industry, retired before they even heard of Paul Douglas or heard of Mike Odom. These guys ride in out of nowhere in Greenwich and then tell the people who built the company to take a hike.
Odom says the company is looking for flexibility from the union. Trumka says Pittston has to make the first move.
I think the ball's in their court. They say they have all of these needs. I'm saying, prove it to me. Prove what you need. As soon as you prove it, I'll move to address your needs.
Pittston has made it clear that Paul Douglas, head of the parent company, will not get involved in these talks. Trumka keeps insisting he's necessary.
He's the CEO of the corporation. Moreover, we think it's a show of good faith. His being here yesterday would have said to everybody, Pittston wants to settle. His not being here said, it's not important to Pittston.
Trumka's involvement in the talks is expected to be short-lived unless Douglas changes his mind. In Duffield, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center.
Who rallied behind striking miners gathering in St. Paul, Virginia. UMW President Richard Trumka, along with Cecil Roberts and Marty Hudson, blasted the recent efforts to agree on a contract.
When they sat in front of Judge Williams, there were no conditions. Now they put a condition on it. In order for us to bargain, we have to relinquish. We have to turn our back on 130,000 pensions. That's what he's saying.
Meanwhile, Boston Mayor Raymond Flynn said tonight if a strike settlement's not reached in the next week, the city will boycott business at a large Boston bank that Pittston is involved with.
That city has indicated to Bill Craig, who is the head of the Shawmut Bank, who is also on the board of directors of Pittston, that if something didn't happen in 7 days, that the city of Boston, which channels millions of dollars through that institution, and the mayor will be telling us about that tomorrow, that the city will discontinue their service with that bank.
Miners from several states gathered tonight to show their support for striking Pittston miners. Driving and brandishing a firearm that were filed against Jesse James Meadows. Meadows was charged with hitting 3 UMW picketers with his truck May 2nd. Rocks thrown at Meadows broke the windows in his truck and the windows in another truck driven by his son.
The Commonwealth had to show probable cause. They didn't have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and as a result of that, we did not present today all the evidence we have to introduce at the trial.
So you're optimistic he'll...
Very optimistic.
Meadows' lawyer says he'll ask that the trial be moved out of Russell County if Meadows is indicted by the grand jury. Some striking coal miners in the Soviet Union began returning to work today, but thousands more are still off the job. About 200,000 miners have been striking for higher pay and better medical facilities. The government agreed to wage hikes, and that sent some workers back into the mines. Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev is threatening to take a
strike that has idled some 2,000 coal miners in West Virginia, Virginia, and Kentucky. The striking miners say the most important issues are job security and benefits. The company contends that it needs to cut costs and maintain flexibility in order to compete in foreign markets. Both the union and the company see their dispute as a fight for survival. And caught in the middle are the miners, both active and retired, and their families.
These green leaves cover the scars that these mines have made on these mountains. You can't see the holes back in the hills and the people bringing that black gold out for Pittston's pockets. You can't see the scars on these miners' bodies that were caused by a mine accident. And you can't see down inside of their lungs the scars that this black lung has caused.
I had my mommy and daddy, my sister with me in church. I'm looking forward to the day when we can all be together in heaven and my daddy will have to be suffering with this black lung.
My daddy has lost an ear due to a mining accident. He had his back injured due to a rock fall. There's so many injuries that my father's had, and right now he's suffering from black lung. And many a time we've got to beat my daddy on the back to get that up so that he can breathe.
For For 34 years, James Justice worked in the coal mines, knowing the dangers, but confident he could depend on his benefits to take care of any medical problems. But when the contract expired, so did his medical card. Now Pittston has offered a new health package, one Justice says would reduce his benefits.
My dad is still a young man in age, but his body doesn't belong to him. It belonged to Pittston, and they got the best part of it. And he's got what's left. And they don't want to pay him hospitalization for what the coal mines caused.
Raymond Harrison claims he too lost his benefits less than a year after surviving a serious accident.
Took my head off, one side of it, from half of my eye. It took my eye out. And cheekbone, jawbone was broke 4 times. And then busted my eardrum. I'm only 52 years old. And I'm disabled for the rest of my life. I give them 20 years of my life. I worked, I did what they said. They promised me that I would have insurance. But then in January the 31st of '88, they took it all away, said they didn't have to furnish it. They promised me that they would pull me, take care of me, and pay my full benefits. And I think they should furnish the policy that they promised me.
Sad as those human tragedies may be, there are, of course, 2 sides to every story. Michael Odom has the mine side. The president of the Pittston Coal Group. He's at our NBC affiliate in Bristol, Virginia this morning, WCYB TV. And good morning, Mr. Odom.
Good morning, Brian.
What do you say to those men, sir, who were promised 100% health care and now feel betrayed that they're offered 80?
Well, they were promised lifetime benefits through the funds. That's in their annual report that says there's already been litigation taken to the Supreme Court in which spouses and surviving widows of pensioners challenged that somebody, either the companies or the funds, owe me benefits for the rest of my life. And all the way to the highest court of the land, they ruled that the benefits are contractually required during the life of the contract, but if there's no successor agreement or reduced benefits, the responsibility then switches to the funds until there's a new agreement.
Well, why do you want no part of what is an agreement that is industry-wide and involves many employers?
Well, one of the principles with the reason we withdrew to begin bargaining is we want to have a say-so in the flexibility and management of our company.
Well, why is Pittston the exception, though, sir? I mean, all the other companies, all the other mines are a part of that same agreement?
Pittston is not the exception. There are many, many other companies that do not participate in those funds, some of which contracts have just been signed in the last year. There's approximately 140 non-conforming agreements that we've asked to see. So we're not the only ones that do not participate in that, those funds.
Also with us in Bristol is Richard Trumka. He is president of the United Mine Workers Union. Good morning, Mr. Trumka.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Pittston says they want to be exempted from that BCOA fund, the Bituminous Coal Operators Association fund, and they said that's non-negotiable. Can you work around that?
Well, it's interesting because yesterday in negotiations they told us that there isn't a single proposal that we've given them that they cannot afford. It really baffles us why they want to renege on this promise. They've made a promise for people, as you just shown on television, that have given the best part of their lives, and we intend to see to it that Pittston lives up and does not renege on that social promise.
But I ask you again, can you work around that?
I don't see how we could ever turn our backs on 130,000 pensioners. I don't see how we could split up our families. I don't see how we could ask our members to tell their fathers and their grandfathers and people that live beside them that Pittston was just kidding and it was a cruel hoax and we won't give them health care after they've been promised that for life.
Mr. Odom, you're back at the bargaining table. You bring anything new with you?
No. We bargained for a year and a half, and bargaining was terminated in June when the union walked away. They said that they had flexibility. We said we're willing to return to the bargaining table and see if you're flexible within the scope and bounds of our offer. If there's any give and take, we'll be willing to look at it.
Have you seen any evidence of that flexibility?
Well, yesterday was the first day back at the bargaining table, and there wasn't any yesterday, but that's still just the first step. I'm still optimistic and hoping that the union will demonstrate that flexibility.
Mr. Trumka?
Well, what we would like Pittston to do is, since they said they can afford everything, is to prove it to us. Demonstrate your need. As soon as they demonstrate a need to us with other than just pure rhetoric, we'll move to address that need. Yesterday, they refused to give us any proof. We'll see if they'll do it today.
We're obviously not going to be able to negotiate this right here, but Mr. Odom, real briefly, is this a must-win for your industry's survival?
The industry's going to survive. The question now is whether or not the union and the companies in which it's affiliated with is willing to recognize the dynamics of the coal industry and the world economy in which we all participate. There's no reason that it should be a life or death struggle for either party if the parties will change.
Mr. Michael Odom, Mr. Richard Trumka. Gentlemen, I thank you both. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's 56 past. We're going to come back in just a moment.
Pittston Coal Group resumed in Duffield, Virginia today. Virginia State Police are investigating reports of an explosion at a Pittston operation in Russell County. Pittston security personnel reported an explosion at Moss No. 2 in the Laurel Mountain area. Security personnel also told police that power lines were down between Moss No. 2 and the company's Big Caney strip mine. Police say they have not confirmed the explosion, but electric power is off in that area and no arrests have been made. State police also say that a large group of vehicles, they estimate between 200 and 300, is circling Pittston's Moss No. 3 operation at this hour. And Pittston Coal Group President Mike Odom and Union President Richard Trumka will join us on Noon Magazine in just a few minutes. About a month ago, they are just resuming. We're in the second day of talks now. And joining us to tell us how those are going are the President of Pittston Coal, Mike Odom, and the President of the UMW, Richard Trumka. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us today.
Sure.
We know you are very busy getting to work on these talks. How are they going so far?
Well, yesterday was the first day, and that's just the first step, and there was no progress yesterday, but we're still hopeful something will come out of it.
Mr. Trumka?
Well, we were disappointed that Mr. Douglas didn't show up. I think that would have shown a commitment on Pittston's part. We were also disappointed that they wanted to have us in separate rooms where we couldn't have a dialogue back and forth and perhaps be able to talk out some of the issues that separate us. What we'd like to see them do is demonstrate to us the needs that they claim they have.
In fact, it's a little strange to see you both sitting in the same area. You've been so far apart on so many issues. It's interesting that Judge Williams was able to get you back to the table when the governors of 3 different states were unsuccessful. What did he do that got the two of you to get back to some negotiating?
You probably ought to ask him, because we accepted all 3 of the governor's offers, and Pittston were the ones that did not. And in fact, Mr. Douglas still hasn't accepted the offer, so perhaps you should ask Mr. Odom here.
Mr. Odom, what was it?
Well, the difference in declining the West Virginia governor's offer was he was going to have political intervention into the situation, and that's totally improper. The acceptance with Judge Williams was consistent with our response to Governor Bolanos. We accepted to return with the auspices of federal mediation. That's what Governor Bolanos asked for. Now, Mr. Trumka raised it, and we did to say that with Governor Bolanos. No one's going to dictate to either party who is on their bargaining team, or at least not to us. We think it's inappropriate for anybody to do that.
So you feel this is a more unbiased forum, or
We have our best people at the table, and that's what each party should have. We feel we have our best people, and Mr. Douglas is not going to attend. We know what the needs are of our company. It's to be flexible. It's to be able to manage our company for the best long-term interests of the Pittston Coal Group, not any other company.
It's interesting to me also, you're planning on leaving now today, now that the ball is rolling, or is that still in your plan, Mr. Trumka?
Well, we'll wait and see.
You're just going to see how it goes. I wonder, I know there are several issues. It's difficult to cover them all in a short interview. What are the big issues for each of you? What would it take, Mr. Trumka, for you to say that, yes, I see Pittston moving, and vice versa? Why don't we start with you?
Well, first of all, I think there are a couple of main issues. One's health care for the pensioners. They haven't paid for the health care of their own pensioners, and we have a serious problem. Who will pay for the health care of those pensioners if everybody takes the route that Pittston has.
Now, we know that's an issue that's been in the papers. What's it going to take for Pittston to do for you to say, okay, they're moving on that, then we can move too?
I think the one thing he could do right here in front of this camera is remove the impediment that he erected yesterday before we even started negotiations. He said, we're absolutely adamant on health care. We're absolutely adamant on the funds. We refuse to do anything. We won't take care of those old people. And unless the union absolutely abandons 130,000 pensioners, no deal. It's a no-show, I think. Isn't that the word you use? No-show? No starter?
Well, let's give Mr. Odom a chance to respond.
Well, first of all, it's not 130,000 people in the pension. Their own report says it's 119,000. Less than 1% of those people are ours. There's no exact head count. So, I mean, we're not responsible. We're not the culprit for the pensioners. There are many other companies that do not participate in those funds, but Pittston is not the issue there. If Pittston were to disappear, the problem with those funds and their future assets to provide those benefits is still going to be there. We think that our proposal will put people back to work, and we're not going to participate in those funds. We're going to take care of our people.
Now, real quickly, we're almost out of time. What would it take on your part to look at the union and say, okay, the union is making a move, even though it's a small one, we think there's room to maybe come to an agreement here?
Well, we pointed out one that we said from the very beginning that that's what we've been talking about today, is that we're not going to participate in the union pension funds and its benefits. That one's either in or out. We want to take care of our people. That would be one first step.
And it's going to take a first step to get something going, because this certainly has gone on for 3 months. You both had said very early on in the strike that you were prepared for 2 years on each side. Is that still the case?
Well, if he's prepared for 2 years, we're prepared for 2 years and 1 day.
Okay. We can see there's still plenty to work out. We wish you very good luck in your negotiations and hope something breaks very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
Thanks for being with us. And we'll be right back with weather after this.
Hockey as yesterday. Today, Pittston once again refused to meet face-to-face with the UMW. They also took a strong stand on at least one UMW demand. Talks ended early today after Pittston officials refused to meet face-to-face with the UMWA. But the UMW continued to work on an unidentified proposal that they will present tomorrow morning.
How in the world can they say they're bargaining in good faith or attempting to reach a resolution of this dispute when they won't even bargain face-to-face with the union?
The UMW also continued to demand that Pittston participate in a UMW pension fund. But Pittston officials say their employees are already taken care of, and they will not negotiate that proposal.
We're at the bottom of the barrel. There's nothing else to give. Now, if they want something, they got to give up something. And what we're saying now is, you have said for 5 weeks, come back at the table, we're flexible. Show me.
Roberts also said he believes the company and its negotiators would like to see the talks moved outside the area.
And I don't believe that you or anyone else in this area should allow them to walk out of here and go back to New York and say that they can't negotiate down here because there's too much scrutiny. That's what they'd like to do.
Odom said in past negotiations the talks have been rotated. While not directly stating that, it was certainly a hint. Odom also said Pittston would not negotiate a contract if Pittston is not allowed a voice regarding the future of its employees.
The country's fourth largest hat in the negotiating ring in the fight between the United Mine Workers and Pittston. Today in Carbo, Virginia, Boston's Mayor Ray Flynn gave his city's support to striking miners who he says have been given a raw deal by Pittston. In a deal of their own, Boston City Council says it will pull millions of dollars out of a bank operated by a member of Pittston's board of directors. Flynn says he hopes this won't be necessary.
I think it's very, very important that I, as a representative of American City, the oldest city in America, most historic city in America, stand with the United Mine Workers to express my support, and whatever way I can present their message, and this message of an unfair labor practice, I will do that on a number of occasions that I have.
Mayor Flynn will speak in support of striking miners at a rally tonight in Carbo, in which 3,000 to 4,000 striking United Mine Workers are expected to attend.
Pittston security officers say a dynamite explosion this morning destroyed a power line carrying electricity to Pittston facilities. The power line was located in a secluded area of Russell County. Electricity was halted to 11 Pittston outlets for most of the day. According to company spokeswoman Susan Copeland, no injuries were reported. The explosion is the latest incident in a series of minor violence against Pittston. Meanwhile, 87 coal miners will now be able to walk the picket line permanently after being laid off from the Westmoreland Coal Company. The layoffs have been implemented due to the loss of company business resulting from the recent illegal secondary boycott by the United Mine Workers. According to the company, future cuts will be based on coal prices and production costs.
Off 87 miners at its Virginia operations. The company says the dismissals were due to wildcat strikes in support of Pittston miners. Westmoreland officials say the loss of business during the recent illegal secondary boycott by the United Mine Workers accelerated the timing of the layoffs. The company says further reductions in the workforce or temporary idling of facilities will be made based on coal prices and production costs. Federal mediators continued to shuttle messages between motel rooms of United Mine Workers and Pittston Coal officials today. Day 2 of negotiations appear to have ended with little progress. But as News Center 5's Wendy Griffith reports, the union has promised a new proposal tomorrow.
United Mine Worker Cecil Roberts emerged from behind closed doors around noon, saying talks had stalled because the two sides weren't meeting in the same room.
How in the world can they say they're bargaining in good faith or are attempting to reach a resolution of this dispute when they won't even bargain face-to-face with the union?
But Roberts told reporters they would have something to offer Pittston tomorrow.
We're going to work today on a proposal to give to them. They've refused to give us a proposal, so we'll take the first step.
Pittston Vice President Joe Farrell appeared less optimistic about progress in the talks.
The union is standing on their proposal of last February, and we're standing on our proposal of last June.
This morning, UMW leader Richard Trumka and Pittston's Mike Odom went face-to-face on the Today Show from the TV5 studio. Then we asked what it would take to get negotiations moving forward.
That we're not going to participate in the union pension funds and its benefits. That one's either in or out. We want to take care of our people.
They haven't paid for the health care of their own pensioners, and we have a serious problem. Who will pay for the health care of those pensioners if everybody takes the route that Pittston has?
Talks between union and Pittston officials ended early today with not much action. But tomorrow, union members say they'll hand Pittston a new proposal and go back to the bargaining table once again. In Duffield, Virginia, Wendy Griffith, News Center 5.
Buchanan County, Virginia has knocked out electrical service at a Pittston Coal facility. Virginia State Police say gunshots and an explosion took out lines serving the Moss No. 2 coal processing plant. The incident occurred early this morning and is still under investigation. Officials say power will be off until tomorrow. And about 1,000 Ohio coal miners have joined striking United Mine Workers on the picket lines in Southwest Virginia. News Center 5's John Mongol has more on the 15th week of the strike between the union and Pittston.
Boston Mayor Raymond Flynn has come to Southwest Virginia to see if the stories he has heard are true.
The stories that were presented to me were somewhat troubling. The police situation down here, what appears to be intimidation.
That opinion is shared by the numerous out-of-state union members who have joined striking Pittston miners, slowing traffic on area coal haul roads.
I think they're picking on us for being down here for something that we believe in. That is wrong.
The arrest, I'm sure, was made with probable cause. We're not going to stand here and debate the issues of the case. That's what the courts are all about.
State police issued several tickets today for pickets impeding coal truck traffic. And that's just one area where Union President Richard Trumka's longtime associate says the government is taking sides. For the past 3 months, union members on strike here have made allusions to Southwest Virginia and Poland and other communist countries. Today, Boston's mayor agreed.
Right now, it seems like, in many respects, the government has decided and have made a choice. They're in the camp of the company.
Almost every avenue of protest by the union has been met with fines and arrests on both the state and federal levels. But while the state police are unpopular with the pickets, the police say they're trying to be fair.
I don't think that we're singling out one group against the other.
Though the talks have resumed to try and settle the strike, there appears to be little optimism for a quick agreement on the picket lines.
If this company don't negotiate, then I figure it'll be a nationwide strike. That's what it'll take, the whole eastern and western United States, all the unions together to break this thing.
In Russell County, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center 5.
With the issue of a union pension fund, a fund which Pittston has refused to participate in. As both sides continue the stalemate, many are wondering if those talks are now ending. The Pittston negotiating team appears to have dwindled down to one, Coal Vice President Joe Farrell, who had nothing to say today to reporters. But UMW Vice President Cecil Roberts said the talks must continue. Roberts says the strike is about the future of many retired miners like these, who he says could lose their benefits.
There's real live human beings who are now retired, who may A, not have a pension in the future, or B, may not have medical coverage in the future.
The union negotiating team also presented two more proposals today, one that requested face-to-face talks. That was rejected. The only faces the UMW saw this morning were reporters who were invited into the negotiating room. The UMW also made a proposal they say could provide jobs for retired miners. That too was rejected, and Farrell retired to his motel room where he watched a golf game on television.
When I learned that instead of considering our new proposal on flexibility of operations, he's watching a golf game in his room, I think that's insulting to these communities.
Roberts says he thinks the community wants the talks to continue and that Pittston's refusal to meet face-to-face is unfair to the union and to the community as a whole.
I don't believe this community wants us to walk away from these people either, because these are the citizens here who will have to find a new way or a different way to have medical coverage for their wives and their children.
The UMW says they are willing to continue the talks. Pittston says they are still waiting to hear formal proposals made by the United Mine Workers. Also yesterday, we reported an explosion in a secluded area of Russell County, Virginia, destroyed a power line carrying electricity to Pittston facilities. In reporting that story, some people interpreted the event as an act of violence by the miners specifically. However, that was not our interpretation, nor have authorities charged anyone with that explosion.
Workers and Pittston Coal officials have stalled for the weekend, but negotiations are expected to resume Tuesday. Today, union officials presented Pittston with a new proposal. But as News Center 5's Wendy Griffith reports, neither side is willing to give in.
Pittston Vice President Joe Farrell called the union's latest proposal nothing more than a press release for the sake of the media. The proposal was twofold. It called for immediate face-to-face negotiations between the two parties. Second, it suggested a committee to help Pittston market coal in foreign markets, and a proposal to reopen closed mines, giving Pittston an opportunity to increase profits.
We hope that this would be something that they'd be interested in. Although they've said this isn't about money or profits, everything seems to come back to that to us. We want to put people to work down here. We want to keep people who have jobs in those jobs, and we'd like to see some of these closed mines reopen.
Today at Pittston headquarters, President Mike Odom called the proposal nothing new.
They want to play games. I mean, that's fine, but I thought we were here to get down to some substance, and they were going to show us their flexibility and present new proposals. I'm still waiting for that.
While union members waited for Pittston's reaction, Joe Farrell, who was the coal company's only official present today, told reporters he was going to his room to watch a golf game.
That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. That is a slap at the employees, the retirees, and these communities. And that is extremely unfortunate if he's more interested in watching a golf game than considering these negotiations.
In Duffield, Virginia, Wendy Griffith, News Center 5.
Responded to the charges leveled at the Virginia State Police by the mayor of Boston. Raymond Flynn was in the coal fields yesterday and said it appeared that the Commonwealth was siding with Pittston. Flynn, who calls himself a friend of labor, also said the treatment of the miners was not appreciated by the people of Boston. Lyles was asked about Flynn's comparing the situation in the coal fields to labor problems in Poland.
He's a long way from Boston. I would suggest to you that the record shows that the state police are in the coal fields of Virginia to protect the rights of both sides, those who want to work and those who feel they want to strike. I have pointed out for some time that the state police have my full support in protecting the rights of all the parties while this labor management dispute is underway.
Lyles went on to say the state police would also protect Mayor Flynn's right to make such comments.
That it was given to the press before he and other Pittston negotiators got a chance to examine it. This prompted Farrell to call the new proposal a press release, and he went on to say that if the union wanted them to consider a proposal, then it should be submitted as such. Farrell then retired to his room without considering the offer, and that brought a strong reaction from the union.
Unfortunate. That's unfortunate. That is a slap at the employees, the retirees, and these communities, and that is extremely unfortunate. If he's more interested in watching a golf game than considering these negotiations.
Meanwhile, 42 people have been charged with conspiracy to commit a felony. State troopers in Virginia say it's more reaction from the coal strike there. 2 troopers and a cruiser were struck by a hail of rocks in Dickinson County today. The attack continued when the troopers got out of their cars, and one of the officers fired his weapon in self-defense. State Police spokesman Charles Vaughn said none of the rock throwers were injured and that the troopers received only minor.
County Courthouse. Meanwhile, Pittston Company officials are spending the weekend studying union proposals offered Friday. The unions offered to work on Sunday if the company will rehire 4,000 laid-off miners as the company opens new mines. Workers' union is costing the Pittston Company a lot of money. According to the company's second quarter reports, Pittston suffered a $3.6 million loss in its coal operations. Coal Company Chairman Paul Douglas blamed the losses on the 3-month-old strike. In County Courthouse, while Pittston officials are spending the weekend studying union proposals offered Friday, the unions offered to work on Sunday if the company will rehire 4,000 laid-off miners as the company opens new mines. Union proposals offered Friday. A response is expected Tuesday. But even though they're talking, it's in separate.
Tomorrow in Duffield, Virginia. The break came Friday to give Pittston time to consider the union's latest contract proposal. The union says it would honor Pittston's Sunday work request if the company promises to fill jobs at new mines with laid-off miners. The two sides have yet to meet face-to-face at the bargaining table. Meanwhile, Westmoreland Coal reported today it had experienced a loss in the second quarter of this year due to an illegal secondary work stoppage by the United Mine Workers. Westmoreland also reported some of their employees were prohibited from entering the coal fields today by striking miners in that area.
The big corporations right now don't give a damn about us.
UMW members pledge nonviolence and a new era for their union.
Times have changed, and the UMWA has changed.
We're not violent. I mean, we're here to build, not destroy.
But it took only 1 week for the coal trucks to gather into convoys, the state police to come in, and tension to rise.
Tried to do the civil resistance and do it in a nonviolent way. I guess it just helps to prove that some of the violence may not have been attributed to us. Whether it's violent or nonviolent depends on which end of the rock you're on. If it's going away from you, it's a pretty harmless weapon. But if it's coming at you, it tends to become more menacing as it gets closer.
The nonviolent tactics of the union, including blocking coal trucks headed for Pittston preparation plants. That brought court action, arrests, jailings, and fines.
Failure to move will result in your arrest. Do you understand what I've told you? I'm asking you to move now.
The court action has continued through the 15 weeks of the strike, as have rallies that have brought in the likes of Jesse Jackson and Cesar Chavez, as well as other sympathizers. Sons and daughters of coal miners left schools in support of their striking parents. And the pickets have accused state police of undue violence.
It was choking the men when they load them on the bus, twisting their arms, twisting their ears, dragging them on the hardtop.
We're here merely as a quote-unquote peacekeeping force. It is such that most of the violations of the law that are occurring in close proximity to the trucks.
The state police issue has created a backlash against Democratic Governor Jerry Baliles, formerly a very popular politician in the area.
And the governor knows where we live at. The governor's been to my home. The governor's showered in my home and changed clothes in my home. He's eaten my food. but he's drunk my liquor.
And I recognize in the middle of a strike that emotions run high, that friendships and facts are sometimes forgotten.
Both parties have left and returned to the bargaining tables, but after 111 days, little seems to have been accomplished.
They want to play games. I mean, that's fine, but I thought we were here to get down to some substance, and they were going to show us their flexibility and present new proposals.
Although they've said this isn't about money or profits, everything seems to come back to that to us. We want to put people to work down here. We want to keep people who have jobs in those jobs.
There are no signs the strike will end soon, but both sides remain resolute.
Right's going to win, boys. I'm a firm believer in that.
John Mongol, News Center 5.
On the company today, refusing to cross picket lines at the company's operations in Wise and Lee counties. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
All 11 Westmoreland mines shut down again just after the announcement of 87 layoffs blamed on earlier work stoppages and disciplinary action against 3 employees for participating in the Pittston strike. Westmoreland workers are refusing to cross what the union calls stranger picket lines.
The stranger pickets, I believe or assume, are from Pittston, and they don't appreciate how Westmoreland has supported Pittston, and they don't appreciate how Westmoreland has treated their employees.
The pickets have been appearing at shift change and then leave.
The Westmoreland people, as I understood it, returned to work last week, and we expect them to be working this week, and it came as a total surprise when I found out that they had some stranger pickets and were out again last night.
The work stoppage has brought Westmoreland to federal court here in Big Stone Gap. The company has obtained a temporary restraining order directing the union to send its members back to work. The court order, good for 10 days, will be dissolved or expanded depending on the union's reaction.
The Westmoreland workers don't have any control over that. It's just a fact. A union employee will not cross a picket line, and I guess they have to live with the consequences.
In Wise County, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
United Mine Workers strikes, but the work stoppage against the Pittston Coal Group is the largest strike against a single employer since the 1940s. The strike has gone on 111 days so far, the amount of time it took to settle the 1977 National Coal Strike. News Center 5's John Mongol has a review of the 1989 Pittston UMWA strike.
Miners left their jobs for the picket lines on April the 5th. They had worked for 14 months without a contract and went to the picket lines with resolution.
We're out to win this. We're out to win it for the American workers. But the big corporations right now don't give a damn about us.
UMW members pledged nonviolence and a new era for their union.
Times have changed, and the UMWA has changed.
We're not violent. I mean, we're here to build, not destroy.
But it took only 1 week for the coal trucks to gather into convoys, the state police to come in, and tension to rise.
Tried to do the civil resistance and do it in a nonviolent way. I guess it just helps to prove that some of the violence may not have been attributed to us. Whether it's violent or nonviolent depends on which end of the rock you're on. You know, if it's going away from you, it's a pretty harmless weapon. But if it's coming at you, it tends to become more menacing as it gets closer.
The nonviolent tactics of the union, including blocking coal trucks headed for Pittston preparation plants. That brought court action, arrests, jailings, and fines.
Failure to move will result in your arrest. Do you understand what I've told you? I'm asking you to move now.
The court action has continued through the 15 weeks of the strike, as have rallies that have brought in the likes of Jesse Jackson and Cesar Chavez, as well as other sympathizers. Sons and daughters of coal miners left schools in support of their striking parents, and the pickets have accused state police of undue violence.
It was choking the men when they load them on the bus, twisting their arms, twisting their ears, dragging them on the hard top.
We're here merely as a quote-unquote peacekeeping force. It It is such that most of the violations of the law that are occurring in close proximity to the trucks.
The state police issue has created a backlash against Democratic Governor Jerry Blau, formerly a very popular politician in the area.
And the governor knows where we live at. The governor's been to my home. The governor's showered in my home and changed clothes in my home. He's eaten my food and he's drunk my liquor.
And I recognize in the middle of a strike that emotions run high, that friendships and facts are sometimes forgotten.
Both parties have left and returned to the bargaining table, but after 111 days, little seems to have been accomplished.
They want to play games. I mean, that's fine, but I thought we were here to get down to some substance, and they were going to show us their flexibility and present new proposals.
Although they've said this isn't about money or profits, everything seems to come back to that to us. We want to put people to work down here. We want to keep people who have jobs in those jobs.
There are no signs the strike will end soon, but both sides remain resolute.
Right's going to win, boys. I'm a firm believer in that.
John Mongol, News Center 5.
Police Lieutenant C.F. Eaton says approximately 25 men were arrested on obstruction of traffic charges this morning at the Pittston Coal Group's Moss No. 3 plant in Russell County, Virginia. Eaton says they were arrested after staging a sit-down protest in the roadway in front of coal trucks. They are being taken to the state prison unit at Blackford for processing of the charges. No injuries are reported. The United Mine Workers and the Pittston Coal Group get back to negotiations this afternoon in Duffield. The strike against Pittston is now the longest and the largest against a single coal company in Virginia since the 1940s. The strike is 112 days old and little progress is being made in negotiations. Thousands of Soviet coal miners are back on the job today. They've ended their week-long labor strike, a strike Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev says threatened his reform movement. We have more on the strike settlement from NBC's Tom Pettit in Moscow.
The reopening of the coal mines in the Ukraine is a victory for Gorbachev, at least for today. Tens of thousands of miners went back today, ending for now the labor crisis in the Soviet Union and easing Gorbachev's political crisis. Gorbachev had used television, sweet talk, tough talk, and promises. It was 2:15 in the morning when the promises arrived in Donetsk, 550 miles from Moscow. Promises in writing, signed by President Gorbachev himself. The miners, in the end, had won an enormous victory, historic. They had forced Mikhail Gorbachev to meet their demands. More pay, better working conditions, more control over how the mines are run. Gorbachev had no choice. Criminologist Alex
Cleary. And I'm Betty Payne. Thanks for being with us this evening. Well, it was back to the bargaining table for representatives of Pittston and the UMW today in Duffield, Virginia. However, the key players in the contract talks for both sides were not present. The current negotiator for the union, Vice President Cecil Roberts, was arrested earlier today for sitting in protest in front of a Pittston mine in McClure, Virginia. Pittston's top man, William Farrell, was not in Duffield either, and no explanation was given for his absence. There were some union officials present at today's session, and they said they have heard no word from their latest proposal to Pittston.
Anything underhanded to Pittston? We think this is where the dispute's at.
Last Friday, the mine workers proposed a joint growth program to the company, and the local people that's present here today either hasn't got the authority or hasn't responded to the proposal as of yet.
Right back into negotiations Friday morning. We're not doing anything underhanded.
Both Pittston and the UMW will not meet again until Friday. The International Board of Directors for the Miners Union is holding its annual meeting tomorrow and Thursday in Duffield.
While Southwest Virginia continues to struggle with that local labor problem, it appears a major coal mine strike in the Soviet Union may be coming to an end. Striking miners in the Ukraine.
Coal resumed today, but without the union's top negotiator. Mine Workers Vice President Cecil Roberts was jailed today in Russell County, Virginia, along with several members of the union's executive board. We have two reports from News Center 5's John Mongo and Lisa Mitchell. First, John.
The latest disturbances occurred around Pittston's Moss No. 3 preparation plant. the site of numerous sit-down demonstrations during the 112-day strike.
We had a few people come up and decided they was tired of this mess. They just sat down in the road.
Leading the group was Cecil Roberts, the union's #2 leader and usually the union's chief negotiator.
This morning we went out and made a personal commitment to this effort by sitting in the road, and so many other people have done that themselves, and we want to demonstrate our commitment to the strike and with the fellowship with the other workers.
The renewal of the sit-down tactics and other actions against Pittston took company officials by surprise.
We thought the injunctions were doing what they were supposed to do up until here recently, and it appears it's really escalated.
Quite frankly, I'm still going to be in one room and he's going to be in another, so what's the difference?
The 20 union pickets arrested at Moss were held at the Appalachian Corrections Unit for several hours before being taken to the Russell County Jail. Most of the out-of-state pickets arrested this morning will have a chance to bond out of the Russell County Jail. But Vice President Cecil Roberts says he'll spend at least one night behind bars. Those arrested today will face federal charges in Big Stone Gap next month. While the demonstration came as a surprise to Pittston management, they say that they have been under attack all day.
It started out about 8 o'clock up on what we call Cheney Creek Road. A large group, about 70 to 75 vehicles, rocked severely a bunch of trucks that were hauling from our Lambert Fort 2 mine. That group then moved up to what we call a Ho Chi Minh Trail, or up towards Laurel Mountain Mine.
The union's executive board will meet in Duffield tomorrow. In Russell County, Virginia, John Mongol, News.
So Roberts in jail. The union's #3 man, John Banovic, has taken charge at contract talks, still refusing to meet face-to-face with the union. Pittston is also missing its chief negotiator, Joe Farrell, now, with another local company official and a lawyer filling in at the bargaining table.
The union is totally disappointed that one of the Pittston corporate officers wasn't present. I think that the United Mine Workers demonstrated their effort of good faith bargaining in the fact that all 3 of the line officers, as of this day, has been present at the table to try to resolve this situation.
Union negotiators say they were given no explanation for Farrell's absence. Without him, they didn't expect any progress. The union is still awaiting an official response on its job security and growth proposal, which Pittston has described as nothing new.
Their contentions of nothing new, you know, first of all, bargaining that taking place in New York was verbal, and after we got down here, they said that they'd like to have some proposals in writing, and so we gave them some proposals in writing. And in fact, the discussion of the growth program or growth policy was supposed to have been off the record, but apparently they surfaced it on the record. So we gave it to them in writing to back up our intentions, and as yet we haven't heard no response from them.
With the union's executive board having its annual meeting here Wednesday and Thursday, contract negotiations are expected to break off until Friday. In Duffield, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
As the coal strike in his country is the direct result of changes promised by Mikhail Gorbachev. In a talk to the Johnson City Rotary Club, Alexander Serebikov says,
Police say it was dynamite. There were no injuries and no arrests have been made. Also, an off-duty state trooper found 3 people near his police cruiser at his home near Rosedale early this morning. The 3 were arrested on trespassing charges. Operations have returned to normal at the Westmoreland Coal Company. Union officials in Big Stone Gap say no so-called stranger pickets were reported this morning at Westmoreland's 11 operations in Wise and Lee counties, enabling some 700 to return to work. Officials say the stranger pickets were apparently from the Pittston strike. Westmoreland was shut down for 2 days. And meanwhile, talks between the United Mine Workers and Pittston are stalled again. The 2 sides ended negotiations in Duffield yesterday without much progress, and they have agreed to meet again on August 1st.
Virginia Nunn will go on trial next month on charges of impeding traffic in the coal-stricken areas of southwest Virginia. Sister Bernadette Kinney was arraigned today in Abingdon. Some of Kinney's supporters gathered today calling her July 12th arrest another example of the injustice going on in the strike areas. Supporters of Sister Bernadette Kinney gathered outside the Abingdon Federal Courthouse today to await the outcome of Kinney's arraignment after being arrested July 12th while driving a health care van near the McClure mine in Dickinson County. Kinney pleaded not guilty to the charge of impeding traffic.
I am a nurse practitioner who was on my way home from work, and I was trying to drive the health wagon along the road and it's a large Winnebago, as safely as I could in the flow of traffic.
Kenny also told reporters her employer is now prohibiting her from driving her health care van near the strike-related areas.
That is a deprivation of health care to the people of Dickinson County, and health care is once again a casualty to this strike.
Sister Jean Eason says state troopers in that area have become a provocative presence, and Kenny's arrest is just another example of what's going on.
It would appear that the police are keeping the coal rolling, but they're not doing very much in terms of other people's rights, like funerals who want to be rolling also, to say nothing about the mail and people trying to go to work.
Kenny's attorney says he will request a jury trial because of the seriousness of the charge.
The court at this point has consistently denied that right. We feel it is an important right. She is risking 6 months in jail.
Kenny will appear August 14th in Abingdon, Virginia before Judge Jackson Kaiser, where her attorney is expected to request a trial by jury. The vice president of the United Mine Workers International is a free man this evening after being arrested yesterday for taking part in a sit-down protest at the Moss No. 3 mine. Cecil Roberts, who has headed the negotiations between Pittston and the United Mine Workers, was arrested yesterday morning. Roberts spent the night in the Russell County Jail in Lebanon last night, but was transported to Abingdon Federal Court late this afternoon, where he was released on a $10,000 unsecured bond. Roberts will appear in court in Abingdon on August 3rd.
Could be expanded to a national strike. Trumka says he is updating the union's executive board at meetings in Duffield, Virginia on the Pittston strike and expanding it nationally as an option.
Pittston will be the primary focus of this board meeting, is what it'll be. All other business has been tabled until the next board meeting.
Lots of talk or rumors or whatever about a national strike. Are there any grounds for that, or is it?
That'd be considered, I'm sure.
Trumka has appointed the union's Virginia district leader, Jackie Stump, to the board in a show of support and recognition. To work at the Westmoreland Coal Company after being laid off the job for 2 days, Westmoreland miners would not cross picket lines set up by striking miners in their dispute with the Pittston Coal Group.
They're doing a lot of things that they never did do before, and grievances, not trying to settle grievances and things there. It's just one day it's one thing, one day it's something else, so it's just a continuing situation. There used to be a company that tried to get along with their people, but now, I don't consider them as wanting to get along with the people at all, so what now we're looking to do is try to hope that they want to remedy the situation. That's what we hope.
Steve Anderson, spokesman for Westmoreland, said the company is handling grievances by the book and that the company tries to settle disputes without going to arbitration. $50,000 reward for information on an explosion near the Kentucky-Virginia state line on Monday. 2 legs of an 85-foot tower were blown out and the tower collapsed. The company spokesman says it'll cost $500,000 to fix the tower and transmission line that was also destroyed.
President Paul Douglas to attend recently resumed contract negotiations in Duffield.
While we still cling to hope and still struggle in faith, we are angry and shocked that even this overture by Judge Williams would not bring you to the bargaining table.
A group of Catholic nuns marched up the driveway to Pittston headquarters and attempted to hand-deliver a letter to Coal Group President Mike Odom.
If you don't have an appointment, I don't think you'll be able to see him.
Odom later called the nuns' action a media stunt.
They're doing all these peripheral things to draw publicity, which are all symbols, yet they refuse to talk substance at the table.
Odom said he has yet to see the new flexibility promised by UMW President Rich Trumka during the first 2 days of negotiations in Duffield. Odom questioned whether union officials had a hidden agenda in prolonging the 3.5-month-old strike.
It's either designed to deflect attention away from the situation that the UMWA leadership has placed the union in. Massive job losses, massive erosion of market share, massive unemployment by union miners under the 2 contracts the union leadership personally negotiated. Maybe it's a hidden agenda that deals more with long-term ambitions of people in the union versus the long-term job security of the people of Southern Appalachia.
Negotiations have been recessed while the UMW International Convention is held in Duffield. Mark Helton, Eyewitness News 11, Lebanon.
Well, they're in the final push now, trying to reach the $750,000.
Thanks for being with us. Striking United Mine Workers rallied tonight in St. Paul, Virginia, in one of the biggest shows of solidarity since the strike began. Thousands of striking miners cheered as some of the UMW's top leaders gave their support.
We're free Americans and we're going to be free.
Speaking as a hero, United Mine Workers Vice President Cecil Roberts himself freed just yesterday from a Lebanon, Virginia jail.
Ain't no court's going to turn us around. Ain't no injunction going to turn us around. We're going to win this fight.
It was one of the biggest displays of solidarity since the strike began 4 months ago. Most all of the UMW's top representatives and thousands of striking miners rallied tonight in St. Paul to help push forward the fight against Pittston Coal Company. UMW President Richard Trumka announced the city of Boston has pulled millions of dollars out of a Boston bank run by a member of Pittston's board of directors. Trumka also announced a nationwide invitation to Southwest Virginia.
I'm calling on the governor of Virginia to withdraw the state police, to stop protecting the scam, to stop protecting a company that violates the law, to start charging Pittston for the deceit, for the scam, to start charging Pittston for every penny that he's charging.
A representative of the union's International Executive Board, John Banovic, said day 2 of the board's talks will resume tomorrow in Duffield, minus 5 members who are jailed in Lebanon and Abington, Virginia. UMW officials say the fight against Pittston Coal Company is far from over. And with this kind of solidarity, the union says it will win. Actual contract talks between the United Mine Workers and Pittston Coal will resume on Friday.
Next month on charge. There appeared to be little activity at that site today, but company officials have complained of violence against their employees all week.
Looks like things are escalating for whatever purpose.
Despite the frustration of the striking miners, the union appears to remain united.
I think the community is growing stronger and stronger in this effort, and that's one of the most positive things I've ever witnessed in my life.
John Mongol, News Center.
United Mine Workers Union says the labor dispute with Pittston could be expanded to a national coal strike. The union's executive board has been discussing its options during meetings in Duffield, Virginia. Trumka says one of the options is a national strike.
This will be the primary focus of this board meeting, is what it'll be. All other business has been tabled until the next board meeting.
Lots of talk or rumors or whatever about a national strike. Are there any grounds for that, or is it?
That'd be considered, I'm sure.
Trumka appointed the union's Virginia district leader, Jackie Stump, to the executive board as a show of support and recognition. Well, Jackie Stump says miners at Westmoreland Coal
deflect attention away from the situation that the UMWA leadership has placed the union in. Massive job losses, massive erosion of market share.
Terror in the coal fields. Judge Donald McLaughlin had earlier fined the UMW another $3 million for violating his orders limiting strike actions against the Pittston Coal Company. The judge ordered $2 million be paid to the state, $1 million to Dickinson County, and $1.5 million to Russell County. The fines are for rolling roadblocks, the convoys of trucks and cars that slow down coal hauling trucks in the coal fields. Union attorneys say they expect the union will appeal the judge's ruling. Workers at the
large fine. Good evening, everyone. I'm Betty Payne.
And I'm John Cleary. Thanks for being with us. Russell County Judge Donald McLaughlin today fined the United Mine Workers nearly $4.5 million. McLaughlin said the union was using acts of terror in the coal fields, then blasted the miners for assaulting and threatening people in Southwest Virginia. As Mark Wildwin reports this afternoon, the union went on the defensive.
Nearly 1 month ago, Judge McLaughlin launched an investigation into union tactics against Pittston Coal. His finding today said the union failed to stop rolling roadblocks and failed to allow Pittston Coal to operate without interference. He then ordered the Mine Workers Union to pay the state of Virginia $2 million, Dickinson County $1 million, and Russell County almost $1.5 million. At a news conference this afternoon in Duffield, Virginia, Union President Richard Trumka fired back.
Those fines demonstrate the absolute inherent unfairness of the system. The same exact unfairness that precipitated the protests of our membership some few weeks back.
But you guys break the law.
Well, I guess that's true. I guess the judges said we've broken the law, and I don't own up to that because I don't think we have.
Contract negotiations between Pittston and the union are scheduled to resume next Tuesday. Trumka said the fines will give Pittston further reason to not negotiate with the union in good faith.
As long as Pittston sees they have the full force of the government behind them, that we can be fined millions upon millions of dollars, what incentive is there for them to change their bad background, their past?
Adding more fuel to today's fire, Westmoreland Coal announced it has filed a $24 million lawsuit against the union as a result of the continued work stoppages. On the Newswatch in Duffield, Virginia, Mark Wildman, WKPT News.
A board of directors meeting for the International Union. He is expected to have another news conference tomorrow to announce possible further action against Pittston.
Workers of America on strike in Virginia. Another union lost its bid for organization in Tennessee. Workers at the Nissan plant in Smyrna have voted down a proposition to bring a union into their factory. Reactions to that vote are mixed.
I don't think it's a major setback for the International. I think
$1 million in new fines against the United Mine Workers. Today's fines came as a result of violations of an injunction to keep the union from blocking coal traffic around Pittston Company plants. We have two reports tonight. News Center 5's John Mongol was in Russell County today, and Wendy Griffith has a reaction from Union President Rich Trumka. First, John.
Broken windshields and other evidence of violence are common sights in the Southwest Virginia coal fields. Often those who commit these acts are never identified. But Circuit Court Judge Don McLaughlin ruled that at least 21 acts of violence could be attributed to the union. Because of this, Pittston wanted part of the damage award.
It is time-consuming and burdensome on this company just to have our rights upheld.
But the judge did not agree. He split the nearly $4.5 million between the state and the two counties where most of the strike activity has occurred. Part of the fines were levied for nonviolent violations of the injunction, including rolling pickets who slowed coal truck traffic.
The courts get to write the law, and then they get to prosecute it, and then they get to enforce it. That's right. We could be back here at any time.
The judge says he did not impose fines as high as he could because the actions he found in contempt of his court have also made the union subject to heavy federal fines.
I think this once and for all destroys a union argument that there's no justice in Virginia.
All of the institutions that are overseeing this dispute seem to have been swept up in it rather than applying justice.
Security remains tight around almost all company properties, despite the maneuvering in the court systems. And striking miners man the picket shacks, hoping an agreement can be reached. In Russell County, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center 5.
There's a system here that says if a working person has the audacity to stand up to defend their fathers and their grandfathers and their communities, that this system's going to try to step on them and find them out of existence. Totally oblivious to what's fair.
United Mine Workers President Richard Trumka expressed his outrage over the nearly $4.5 million fines levied against the union. Trumka says today's fine reinforces the unfairness in the system and makes good faith bargaining far less likely.
As long as Pittston sees they have the full force of the government behind them, that we can be fined millions upon millions of dollars, what incentive is there for them to change their bad background, their past?
Trumka said the union's executive board meeting had to be postponed with the news of the fines, and also because several board members were facing criminal contempt charges. The board members, including Vice President Cecil Roberts, were charged with illegal picketing under the state injunction.
Resolved the 16-week strike, but it is unclear what form that pressure will take. News Center 5's John Mongol has more.
It was relatively quiet in Southwest Virginia's coal fields today, though sporadic violence was reported, including throwing rocks at coal trucks. But on the picket line, striking miners say something has to be done, but they don't know what.
Regardless what President Trump does, he doesn't have any choice because of the way the governor and the courts have stacked up against the worker. So he's going to have to do with something, and what it is, I don't know.
In Washington, Virginia Senator John Warner took the sides of the courts and the state's Democratic governor on strike-related issues.
I salute Governor Belize. He's tried hard. The federal and state judges have tried hard. The state police have tried hard to maintain whatever law and order they can. Far better in Virginia than in West Virginia.
In another related issue, the mine workers lost a court battle to increase funding of the 1950 benefit fund. Union leadership had hoped the federal court in Washington would order an immediate increase in coal operators' contributions to that fund.
I think they're blinded, just blinded. God forgive them, for they know not what to do.
John Mongol, News Center 5.
Last night, state police say a Covenant Coal employee has been charged with burning the building. A United Mine Workers International representative, Henry Shortridge, says the shack was at the entrance to a coal loading dock.
And UMW members are waiting to see what will happen in the long, drawn-out negotiations. Meanwhile, miners in southern Ohio are rallying for public support in their quest for unity. As Stephen Ring reports, their rally today was one of a different sort.
Just weeks after police hauled strikers off the picket lines, this protest comes in a different form. No pickets and no police, just a celebration of the solidarity that holds these coal miners together.
We are together. We're solid. And we will get solid. It might take 2 months, it might take 3 months, but eventually all unions will be solid in the United States.
There's a push on nationwide just to do away with organized labor as a whole. We just feel like we have to stick together now as mine workers.
All these mine workers are from 5 southern Ohio mines. They came out to this rally pledging to remain loyal to their cause of solidarity.
One person can't do it all. That's why we're here today. So we stick together as union brothers, and we always did. That's why we're here.
I think everybody ought to be in on this, because if they're not, United Mine Workers happen to go down the drain, all these other crafts and stuff around are going to follow suit, and all of them's going to be down the drain.
Come out here, support my union brothers. It's the main thing. That's what it's all about.
These mine workers might still be on the job, but they say they're not giving in. They plan to continue with future rallies such as this, and even a big one next month in downtown Pittsburgh. Stephen Ring, WSAZ News Center 3, Meigs County, Ohio.
From Meade Paper and Kingsport sent over provisions today. And tomorrow, a group from Philadelphia is expected to arrive with donations of food.
The Commonwealth. Lieutenant Governor Doug Wilder was greeted today by Bristol, Virginia Mayor James Rector. Wilder told the gathering that as governor, he would not take sides in the current coal strike, but would continue to ensure the safety of everyone involved.
As governor, I should not be confronted with that. I should hope that it's long settled before then. And I think optimistic people would like to believe the same thing that I believe. However, as governor, I would ensure that law and order will prevail. Violence will not be tolerated under any circumstance. I pledge fairness and equity and justice in dealing with that.
The governor said Virginia is a right-to-work state, and he would keep it that way. He also spoke on the issue of regionalism, and he said he will fight to stop the concept that Virginia is a divided state.
We need to end regionalism. We need to be understanding that Virginians are one people, and that what works in terms of education, in terms of housing and job opportunities, should work for other places as well.
Wilder also told those in attendance that drugs and drug abuse by Virginians must be brought under control.
That's why I said...
The District 28 headquarters. Wilder says he wants to meet with the UMW and Pittston to encourage them to continue their talks. Wilder says he is concerned about the effects of a long strike because of its ripple effect on other areas in the Commonwealth. We'll have more on Wilder's meeting at the UMW headquarters tonight at 11.
Congo reports there was only sporadic violence and no arrests.
Virginia State Police say rocks were thrown and one truck was shot as Pittston continued to haul coal from the mines.
I was coming down the road and cut 2 pickets in a red S10. The passenger stuck a gun out the window and shot through it.
It could have been an inside stage job. They could have worked up something, done it themselves, trying to lay it on the union.
Most pickets believe the company is eager to find evidence of violence, so heavier fines can be levied against the union.
I feel like the majority are. Of course, the company could have saved all this problem if they'd gone ahead and signed the BCOA contract.
No arrests have been made in the shooting incident, and state police say they cannot identify the person or persons responsible. The drivers of the trucks say they're scared because of the violent incidents on coal haul roads, but they're not scared enough to stop driving.
Just better, really more money in it.
The union and the company are expected to return to the bargaining table this week. John Mongol, News Center.
Is hearing the union's side of the coal strike tonight and is encouraging its members to settle the dispute. The Democratic nominee for governor has spent the day campaigning in Southwest Virginia, trying to clarify his position on the strike. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
I would ensure that law and order will prevail. Violence will not be tolerated under any circumstance.
On the campaign trail in Bristol, Wilder says that's not switching horses in midstream. He says he never meant to imply earlier that he's anything but neutral in the coal strike and a full supporter of Governor Belial's enforcement of the right-to-work law with a strong presence of state police in the coal fields. Wilder delivered the same message to Pittston Board Chairman Gene Mathis during a private informal meeting later at Emory and Henry College.
We talked just about what we're talking about now, that his commitment to enforcing the laws and being neutral in this situation.
Wilder says some earlier comments were taken out of context. His Republican opponent, Marshall Coleman, says he's dancing around the strike issues.
If I'm dancing around the issues, at least I'm here. I'm meeting with the people. I'm talking with the people. I'm meeting with both sides. He won't be here.
Wilder says he hopes to determine ideas for helping to put an end to the coal strike after meetings with the union and Pittston formally on Wednesday. Lisa Mitchell, News.
Leaders in Castlewood, they talked for more than an hour about the strike and ways to bring it to an end.
I feel that the people here have legitimate concerns. The people in the coal fields have legitimate questions to ask. That's why I came here.
There was discussions about being fair to both sides and treating both sides alike. And once again, that's all we have asked for in this dispute. There is a disagreement, obviously, with respect to us and Governor Belial's respect to that.
Wilder has been campaigning across Southwest Virginia the past few days. Earlier today, he made a stop in Bristol. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell tells us what he had to say.
I would ensure that law and order will prevail. Violence will not be tolerated under any circumstance.
On the campaign trail in Bristol, Wilder says that's not switching horses in midstream. He says he never meant to imply earlier that he's anything but neutral in the coal strike and a full supporter of Governor Belial's enforcement of the right-to-work law with a strong presence of state police in the coal fields. Wilder delivered the same message to Pittston Board Chairman Gene Mathis during a private informal meeting later at Emory and Henry College.
We talked just about what we're talking about now, that his commitment to enforcing the laws and being neutral in this situation.
Wilder says some earlier comments were taken out of context. His Republican opponent, Marshall Coleman, says he's dancing around the strike issues.
If I'm dancing around the issues, at least I'm here. I'm meeting with the people. I'm talking with the people. I'm meeting with both sides. He won't be here.
Wilder says he hopes to determine ideas for helping to put an end to the coal strike after meetings with the union and Pittston formally on Wednesday. Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
And rocks thrown at replacement workers. And this has been a quiet day on the picket lines in the coal fields. News Center 5's John Mongol reports.
Virginia State Police say rocks were thrown and one truck was shot as Pittston continued to haul coal from the mines.
I was coming down the road and cut two pickets in a red S10. The passenger stuck a gun out the window and shot through it.
It could have been an inside stage job. They could have worked up something, done it themselves, trying to lay it on the union.
Most pickets believe the company is eager to find evidence of violence, so heavier fines can be levied against the union.
I feel like the majority are. Of course, the company could have saved all this problem if they'd gone ahead and signed the BCOA contract.
No arrests have been made in the shooting incident, and state police say they cannot identify the person or persons responsible. The drivers of the trucks say they're scared because of the violent incidents on coal haul roads, but they're not scared enough to stop driving.
Just better, really more money in it.
The union and the company are expected to return to the bargaining table this week. John Mongol.
Back at the bargaining table today, but the UMW says Pittston has failed to get the talks off dead center because of continued requests that the union make more concessions. UMWA and Pittston representatives resumed talks today at the Duffield Ramada Inn, but by late afternoon it was apparent, at least from the UMW side, no progress was being made.
They are not going to make a proposal until the union continues to make proposals that are concessionary in nature.
UMW says being asked to continue to make those conciliatory moves during the talks is not the way to reach an agreement.
That's not the way you bargain. Bargain is an exchange. It's not one side continue acquiescing to the other's demands to the point where it's total relinquishing of your position.
Pittston Coal Vice President Joe Farrell has also refused once again to meet with reporters or face-to-face with the UMW, a choice the UMW feels is a bad one concerning the initial agreement to go back to the bargaining table.
They've refused to meet face-to-face, as Judge Williams suggested that they do. We have made an offer every day to do that. I don't think it takes...
Roberts did say the UMW has requested more information from Pittston concerning possible jobs for laid-off miners at Pittston's subsidiaries. Meanwhile, the two sides are expected to be back at the bargaining table tomorrow in Duffield, Virginia.
Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports the union says it's already frustrated.
Negotiating teams for Pittston and the union got back to separate rooms, with Pittston still refusing face-to-face talks. 2 hours later, the union's chief negotiator, Cecil Roberts, emerged. He said Pittston is sticking by its last contract offer from June and is still not responding to the union's proposal to accept work scheduling flexibility in exchange for union job bidding on contract in new mines.
What they've suggested is you continue to make concessions, and if you make enough concessions, we'll consider changing our position. That's not the way you bargain. Bargain is an exchange. It's not one side continue acquiescing to the other's demands to the point where it's total relinquishing of your position. I would hope that they would at least try to show some interest in the workers here.
Pittston negotiators declined comment. Union District 28 President Jackie Stump sat in on the union side. He says Pittston is making no effort except showing up, and that's frustrating him and the union's rank and file.
A lot of them can't understand because the company's running around saying, well, we want to settle this. We'd like to get it settled. Telling the public we want to get it settled, but nothing that they're saying or they're saying it all, but nothing that they're doing showing that they're interested in doing that. So I don't know what their point of doing it is other than just, I don't know if they're trying to win the men back or the public back.
Despite the lack of progress, apparently these sessions will continue. At least the union says its negotiating team will be here Wednesday. In Duffield, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
Be related to the strike, but a trailer owned by a Pittston employee was destroyed in a fire this morning. The trailer was parked at a campground at South Holston Lake early this morning. State police say arson was apparently the cause.
I was called by the owner of the campground about 6:45 this morning to tell me that my camper was gutted by fire. I got over here about 9:15 to find that it was indeed set on fire. There was jugs around the camper where that gasoline or kerosene, whatever, will be analyzed to determine what it was. And it is gutted, completely destroyed.
State police say they don't know who...
Trumka has called yet another memorial walk-off, this time in Harlan County, Kentucky. Today, those memorial strikers and their actions spilled into Lebanon, Virginia, as authorities arrested more than 30 miners who were in support of the UMW cause. Nearly 100 miners from Harlan County, Kentucky arrived today by convoy in downtown Lebanon to show support for striking miners in Southwest Virginia.
We come into Southwest Virginia to basically demonstrate support for the Pittston strikers and their families, as well as digitize to show our dissatisfaction for the way that the strikers and their families and supporters have been treated.
After sitting in front of the Russell County Courthouse, Russell County Sheriff Trigg Fields arrested nearly 30 miners for illegal assembly.
And all the people that are sitting directly in front of this courthouse door are under arrest for obstructing free passage.
Among those arrested was a Catholic priest from Lynch, Kentucky.
Because I think what they're doing is the beginning of something to change the way we've been doing business as usual. And I guess I'm glad to be a part of that.
And you're willing to be jailed for it? The memorial walkout in Harlan County is scheduled to last 3 days. But tension appears to be growing in that area, and more of the demonstrations are expected.
Basically, we all know that when our members over here, our old people that's slaved and worked so hard for so many years to get their medical benefits, when Pittston's cutting it out, then the other companies are not going to be far behind them.
Russell County Sheriff Trigg Fields said his department would attempt to house as many of those arrested today as possible, but said some may be transported to other facilities.
County, Virginia courthouse, including Virginia UMW President Jackie Stump. The group was protesting fines against the union issued from the courthouse, and they protested in a manner that landed the union in court in the first place. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
Kentucky miners came in a convoy to the courthouse. They're not on strike, but came off their jobs from Arch Mineral Corporation in Lynch, Kentucky, on a union-called memorial period to protest over $7 million in fines levied by Circuit Judge Don McLaughlin against the union for similar sit-ins in the Pittston strike.
The law is treating us unfair the way we're doing. And we're just trying to protest to them that we're being treated unfair.
The miners just sat on the courthouse steps, singing and chanting until Russell County Sheriff Trigg Fields appeared. Then they rushed to the courthouse doors to block passage and were joined by Virginia UMW President Jackie Stump, who's been in jail before for leading such sit-ins.
I'm glad to do it with these union brothers and sisters from Kentucky. They're worried about their union just like I'm worried about ours. And $4.some million is a pretty big chunk out of our union treasury.
We'll give you 10 minutes to disperse. If anyone fails to disperse in 10 minutes, we'll be arrested and charged with obstruction of free passage. Okay? Okay.
When time was up, Fields escorted the group on a march to his jail.
Let's get the show on. We'll
Ironically, this crowd of miners is going to jail to protest the actions of a judge who isn't at the courthouse. Judge Don McLaughlin is on vacation. Some of the protesters, including Stump, refused bond and expected to spend at least the night in jail. In Lebanon, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
Held in Duffield. But the action in the strike moved over to Lebanon this afternoon. Some 200 miners and supporters gathered on the steps of the Russell County Courthouse to vent their frustrations before a state judge who has fined the union heavily for violations of court orders. The results were more arrests. Bob Carlton reports.
The well-orchestrated event began as supporters, including union wives and children, held a half-hour song fest with union songs and chants. When the miners arrived, headed by union leaders Jackie Stump and John Cox, Stump told newsmen the union has been frustrated by Judge Donald McLaughlin, who has hit the union with better than $7 million in fines.
In this courtroom here, as you're well aware, the union was fined $4.485 million, I believe, $4,485,000. To us, that's a big chunk out of our treasury. That means a lot to this union. That can mean a lot to the downfall of this union, and we don't intend to take it sitting down. We're sitting down, but we ain't going to take it sitting down.
The miners then moved to new positions in the doorwell of the old courthouse, blocking its entrance, at which time they were instructed in how to be arrested.
Don't give them no hard time whatsoever. The county and the city have been wonderful to us, and we don't want to have any problems with them. If you're arrested, just get up and walk with the county or the city police. We'll give you 10 minutes to disperse. If anyone fails to disperse in 10 minutes, we'll be arrested and charged the obstruction of free passage.
The 27 men arrested, many of them from Harlan, Kentucky, were led away peacefully to the jail. The Kentucky miners were among several hundred Arch Minerals workers on a 3-day work stoppage authorized by UMW President Richard Trumka. Bob Carlton, Eyewitness News.
In the coal fields last night, the Virginia State Police reported at least 2 incidents of shots fired. In Buchanan County last night, 2 vehicles owned by replacement miners were hit by gunfire. And in Tazewell County, the car belonging to the wife of a working miner was hit. No injuries were reported.
Good evening. We'll have more on that story in just a moment, but the group was protesting the fines imposed against the union at the Russell County Courthouse. As News Center 5's Elisa Mitra reports, they were protesting in the same fashion that
President Cecil Roberts and 5 other executive board members. News Center 5's John Mongol reports that all were charged with contempt of a court injunction.
This has become a familiar sight in the 4-month-old strike with the Pittston Coal Group. While several hundred union members demonstrated outside, others, all dressed in camouflage, packed Judge Glenn Williams' court.
These brothers and sisters here, they're from Missouri and West Virginia and various other places, and they've came in showing their support.
Roberts and several others pleaded innocent to the contempt charges that stem from picket line demonstrations designed to slow coal truck traffic. 4 members of the union's executive board pleaded no contest and walked away with 60-day suspended sentences. Union leaders hinted that more sit-downs may be in the offing and more demonstrations may be seen at area courthouses.
You know, if people want to come in here and do that, you know, that's up to them. You know, we're not encouraging or telling them to do it, but if they want to do it, we will, you know, tell them that, you know, how not to get in trouble.
At one point, demonstrators became so loud that federal marshals locked the automatic doors to the courthouse to keep the noise from interrupting the trials. Meanwhile, negotiations between Pittston and the United Mine Workers continued with little progress reported. In Abingdon, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center 5.
That his visit to Southwest Virginia has encouraged strikers and company officials to continue talking and working to end the coal strike. He made the comments today at his stop in Smith County, Virginia, as Teresa Keller reports.
Lieutenant Governor Wilder met with Smith County residents as one of his last stops in Southwest Virginia. This meeting was for voters to meet the man who wants to be governor of Virginia. But since Saturday, Wilder has been in the coal fields talking to UMW and Pittston officials, hoping to help end the coal strike.
I'm not some politician doing this. I'm the lieutenant governor. And to the extent that I already have an office, that would say to me that I should be concerned about what's taking place in Virginia.
Last night, Wilder met with Pittston President Mike Odom.
I am optimistic that there will be opportunities for the parties to get together and that they will resume what I call fruitful negotiations. I think it would be wrong for anyone to encourage pessimism or to believe that it can't happen. I've never known never. And I know what can happen if people come together. And I'm optimistic that it could happen, and I really do look for that.
Wilder says that gaining support was not his only objective in the coal fields.
Do you gain insight as to what the real questions are, the real concerns are, the frustrations, how best to temper those, how best to lessen the tensions?
As Wilder leaves Southwest Virginia, he's looking forward to a committee report on business opportunities in the coal fields. And next week, he releases his new environmental plan.
The 4-month-old coal strike is getting mixed reviews in Southwest Virginia. Pittston Coal officials say investigators had their minds made up before the visit. But the union sees the report as the first positive sign from a government agency. News Center 5's John Mongol has more.
The workers of Southwest Virginia, especially those who are members of the United Mine Workers Union, are being mistreated. That seems to be the thrust of a preliminary report from a House subcommittee investigating the strike.
Getting that message out to the general public that that's what's going on in Southwest Virginia is probably the most important thing happened with this report.
Union members are also pleased that the report says that a tense atmosphere exists in the region because of the massive police presence. The report also states that both state and federal courts are biased toward the company, ignoring unfair labor practice charges from the union.
Those charges were never pursued, got off the ground, while charges filed by the company were swift and harsh.
While the preliminary report says that the courts have been unfair and the unions agree, both the judges involved with the lawsuits and the companies say the courts have been fair. U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams said the investigators did not discuss the strike and strike-related issues with him. And he says that Congress is more concerned with politics while the courts are concerned with law and order.
I think they've been simply enforcing the law. I don't think the state police or federal marshals were sent here with any other intent than to enforce the law.
The report is a preliminary one, and at least one more will follow before the subcommittee reviews the strike issues. And according to the company, the first document is biased.
He had his mind made up and he climbed on the airplane in Washington.
As the report comes out, the talks continue to be deadlocked. The two parties will resume bargaining next week. John Mongol, News Center.
And with Pittston stating that any further concessions will have to be made by the union, the talks have once again stalled. Tomorrow, the strike against Pittston by the United Mine Workers will enter its 5th month, and as of right now, there's no end in sight to the work stoppage. What about the troopers be known to anyone who drives down their roads? Christopher McIntosh took a drive down those roads today.
It's economic survival is what it is.
Wayne Rasnick is referring to his attempt to show support for his friends, neighbors, and customers during the local coal strike. The form his support has taken is this sign outside his market between the small towns of Trammell and Nora on State Route 63.
Men that's on strike, we need their business, and we've helped them, and we sure don't want to discriminate against the troopers, but this is a necessity to keep our regular customers. And that's all it is. I do want to stress that there is no discrimination intended.
Every day, the striking miners congregate outside the M&R to keep watch, and according to them, it is a necessary task.
We got people would come through here and rock this sign and probably burn the place down if we didn't have some people here.
According to Rasnick, the sign has attracted a lot of attention from the state police.
They've, I guess, resented it, but, you know, like I said, I don't mean it. I don't know any of the fellas. They're all from out of here. There is no discrimination there, you know. It's and they're taking it that way, and I don't like that.
Rasnick claims that he put up his sign not just to increase his business or to make enemies of the state troopers, but because the sign will speak for him and his feelings about the overall scope of the coal strike.
It's sort of just a community thing. We have to bond together to overcome this, and I think we will. I think we will overcome it. If I didn't, you know, why would I go out on a limb? But I tell you one thing, if our men fall, then our store will fall, and the rest of the county along with it.
Christopher McIntosh.
At the bargaining table tomorrow in hopes of ending their 4-month-old strike. The two sides recessed talks Friday in Duffield. UMW Vice President Cecil Roberts says the union hopes to present a list of new proposals to Pittston negotiators after Pittston rejected the union's previous offer. The two sides have been at odds since April 5th after the UMW walked off the job because of what it calls unfair labor practices.
The possibility of closing the McClure mine stems from Pittston's failure to comply with a safety regulation limiting the amount of air velocity underground in this mine. The company contends exceeding the limit is necessary to prevent buildup of methane gas and the possibility of explosions, like the 1983 flash fire that killed 7 in McClure.
It would minimize, dramatically reduce the possibility of methane building up anywhere in the mine.
Odom has accused the Federal Mine Safety and Health Administration of bending to union pressure in issuing a mine closure order that's been temporarily stayed at this point by a federal judge. But MSHA officials say they had no legal authority to continue extending enforcement of the regulation, although they agree with Pittston. The safety rule would reduce the mine safety.
We feel, and we'll testify to that, is that lifting the cap on the velocity of feet per second is good because it removes a safety hazard if we didn't. We believe it's the right way to go. We have studies that indicate that keeping it down to the original 300 feet level would not create a hazard, and that bringing it up and taking the cap off that velocity level would in fact dissipate methane gas, which has a risk of exploding.
The union denies it's pushing for enforcement of the regulation to hurt Pittston in the strike. Members say their only concern is the mine's safety, and allowing high air velocity diminishes the mine's early warning fire detection system.
you have a cooling effect plus a dilution of CO. It takes longer for the fire to start, but it also diminishes the amount of CO that the fire is going to produce in that high velocity of air. When that happens, you lose your early warning. You wait until you have a mine fire raging out of control before the CO system can pick it up.
CO monitoring system is extremely sensitive. It reacts very rapidly. It's hooked up to a computer that monitors every facet of that mine, the belt system, bearings, speeds, temperatures. I guess that's one that's going to be debated by the experts. But local MSHA people have said that there should be no upper limit, that that's not a hazard. This system is extremely competent and capable of detecting in an extremely fast fashion a problem.
In Abingdon, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
And Pittston Coal. Contract talks resume in Duffield this afternoon. In Clintwood, the union is planning a rally in front of the Dickinson County Courthouse. And also this afternoon, 2 separate judges are set to hear evidence on Pittston's McClure No. 1 mine. The union says ventilation in that mine violates safety standards. Pittston has filed for an injunction to keep that mine open.
And I'm John Cleary. Thanks for being with us. The McClure No. 1 mine in Dickinson County, Virginia, which was ordered closed last week by the Mine Safety and Health Administration, continues to produce coal even though the UMW says the mine is unsafe. A federal judge blocked the closure, and now the UMW, Pittston, Mine Safety Health Administration, and others involved are trying to sift through a complicated and legal battle. A public hearing that could decide that case continued today in Abingdon, Virginia. Clinchville Coal believes in order to make the McClure No. 1 mine safer from dangerous methane gases, more air is needed inside the mine. The Mine Safety and Health Administration agrees, but ordered the mine closed last week by law because of a UMW petition. But Judge Glenn Williams blocked the closure with a restraining order.
We are in favor, the Mine Safety and Health Administration, of the company's interest in eliminating the cap because we think it will reduce the amount of methane in the mine.
Administrative law judge James Roderick is now trying to sift through hours of testimony by all 4 sides involved in the case and could render another decision that could lift Judge Glenn Williams's restraining order, one that MSHA thinks was unusual in the first place.
We think the proper way to handle this matter legally is through the Federal Mine Safety and Health Review Commission, and that that's the proper procedure that we've always used, and we feel that going through the district court here is not the way to go.
A decision could come this evening from Judge James Roderick. Meanwhile, in Clintwood, Virginia today, leaders of a national citizens organization brought a group of about 50 people to Southwest Virginia today to lend support to the ongoing United Mine Workers strike. The group, called Citizens Action, represents about 2 million members across the country. The organization works on a wide range of issues, including health care, insurance rates, and toxic waste.
We think there's a great injustice being done. Pittston Company is trying to take away health benefits and pensions that people earned and have a right to expect. And we think it's a tremendous injustice. So we want to be here to support them.
Group members say this is not just a strike by coal members against Pittston, but has more far-reaching implications. Members claim if Pittston succeeds in the strike, it will be assigned to other coal companies to do the same.
Several people were arrested for blocking the doors to the county courthouse at the end of a rally designed to get media attention. News Center 5's John Mongol has more on the demonstration.
Judge, down in Abingdon, Judge Williams, he's on Pittston's side. Governor Blau, he's on Pittston's side.
Around 500 miners on strike against the Pittston Coal Group gathered in front of the courthouse and poured out into Main Street. No progress has been made toward a settlement in the 4-month-old strike, and demonstrators were making their feelings known.
We're going to sit together. We're not going to give up. That's one thing for sure.
Demonstrations like this one in Clintwood have become a familiar sight over the last 4 months, but this one has a new twist. Social activists from several states are here answering what UMWA President Richard Trumka called a call for conscience. Several of the activists were briefed for their arrest before joining the striking miners in the demonstration.
This is where we're going to have to draw the line and say that working people have had enough and we're going to stand up for ourselves.
It's something little compared to what these people have to deal with every day.
Joining the out-of-state protesters on the courthouse steps, but not participating in the sit-down, were courthouse employees showing their support for the union and apparently the sentiment of most of the people in Clintwood and Dickinson County.
If they bust our union during this, that's what Pittston's trying to do. They're trying to bust our union. If they do, we always got to move out.
Strike organizers promised more demonstrations and more nationally based support for their cause.
Ain't no federal or state judge going to turn us around. Ain't no injunction going to turn us around.
In Clintwood, Virginia, John Mongol, News.
Another proposal across the table at contract talks with the Pittston Coal Group. The union is proposing a joint study with the company comparing Pittston Coal operations with other non-union subsidiaries of the coal group's parent company. Union officials say they want to identify and address Pittston's claim that an efficiency gap exists between the operations.
We proposed to establish a committee made up of 3 members from the company, 3 members from the union, one of which shall be a member of the bargaining team for both parties, to tour their non-union mines, look at their union mines, and determine if there is such an efficiency gap, and if so, what the causes are of that efficiency gap, and report back to these bargaining teams in an attempt to get these things moving, to get the company off dead center of.
No response yet from Pittston. Company officials have said they will not discuss any issue until the union shows flexibility on pension fund demands. Williams may issue an order keeping the mine open. Has been sentenced to 5 months in jail for contempt of federal court. Senior Judge Glenn Williams sent Philip Anderson of Clenchco, Virginia, to jail for damaging a coal truck. Authorities say Anderson cut the brake lines on a coal truck.
Doing a call for national consciousness in the coal fields. The miners then took their rally from Coburn to the Moss No. 3 mine in Russell County. There were reports of several miners being arrested at that mine, protesting a recent jail sentence handed down to a striking miner. UMW President Richard Trumka on Monday called for striking miners to bring more attention to the strike against Pittston Coal Group.
Southwest Virginia coal fields this afternoon. State troopers carried 15 West Virginia miners from a Pittston plant entrance. News Center 5's John Mongol reports demonstrators were protesting the jailing of a United Mine Workers member yesterday.
With that, troopers began dragging union pickets away from the entrance and to a waiting bus. All of those arrested were from West Virginia's District 29.
The battle lines are drawn, and we're going to win this strike.
Shortly after 2 o'clock, 2 pickup loads of miners arrived at the Moss No. 3 preparation plant and sat down. A few minutes later, union members lined the road and truck traffic stopped.
Just look around, see the people here. They're going to be affected later on, so they are against these heavy fines, the jail sentences, so we're going to stop them from running coal.
But stopping the coal violates Virginia's right-to-work law and a federal court injunction. And troopers and U.S. Marshals closed in. This latest demonstration was apparently spurred by the conviction of Philip Anderson in federal court for federal contempt charges. He's sentenced to 5 months in jail, the stiffest sentence handed out so far during this strike.
It's an assault against the union itself. They're protesting what the state and federal courts have done.
But there appears to be no end in the court actions or the protests. United Mine Workers Vice President Cecil Roberts faces criminal contempt charges in state court Thursday.
There's other things besides stopping the coal. We put political pressure on. That's basically what this is, I guess.
In Russell County, Virginia, John Mongol.
Come to Southwest Virginia. The Tennessee miners, taking 3 Memorial Days off work, came in car convoys to Coburn, Virginia to support Pittston strikers. The Tennessee miners say they're agitated by federal Judge Glenn Williams stepping in to keep Pittston McClure No. 1 mine open despite safety violations.
Understanding that safety is one of the main things that the union stands for. It's one of the main goals that the union has fought for, safety for all coal miners. And then you turn right back around and think that it's being given up over some political reasons that's going on up here. It's unthinkable.
Many of these same miners came to Virginia in June in support of the Pittston strike. The United Mine Workers and Pittston back to the bargaining table. now wants to know why the talks have stalled. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell joins us by phone now from the talks in Duffield, Virginia with the latest. Lisa?
Merrill, Judge Williams has come to Duffield with the intentions of trying to convince Pittston and the UMW to meet face-to-face after no progress during the 3 weeks of federally mediated negotiations from separate rooms. Judge Williams says he also wants to try to budge the two over their apparent stalemate on the strike issues. So far, Williams has been behind closed doors for about 2 hours with Union Vice President Cecil Roberts and Pittston lawyer David Smith. Pittston Coal Group President Mike Odom is here at the Duffield Ramada Inn, but he has yet to join the talks with the judge. Judge Williams says he's making proposals to remove what he calls impediments to face-to-face talks. He hasn't elaborated beyond that. Merrill?
Okay, Lisa, thank you very much.
Talks aren't going well. Judge Glenn Williams joined in the negotiations today, and out on the picket lines, more miners were arrested. We have 2 reports on the strike tonight, one from News Center 5's John Mungle, the other from Lisa Mitchell. We begin with Lisa, who tells us about the judge's involvement.
And I wouldn't even be fooling with it if I didn't think there was a genuine desire on both sides to settle.
Judge Williams came to the contract negotiations that he was instrumental in starting 3 weeks ago because he sees no hope for progress as long as negotiators are meeting in separate rooms. Williams talked with both sides privately, briefly left them alone together, rejoined them, and 3 hours after it started, recessed the meeting until next Tuesday.
Yes, we couldn't quite pull it off.
Until the next meeting, the union, which has been urging face-to-face talks all along, and Pittston, claiming they didn't work before, will each be drafting terms for face-to-face negotiations based on a proposal the judge came up with.
I can't say much about it right now, except it involved each side giving up certain bargaining positions that they've previously taken.
We've been trying to get the company to come back together, and hopefully the judge's effort will bear some fruit.
Pittston sent lawyer David Smith to the talks with Williams, although company president Mike Odom was staying close by in a motel room.
The judge, in his letter to us, was wanting to talk about ways to remove legal impediments to the parties to return to face-to-face talks. But I'm not a lawyer.
But it looks good.
In Duffield, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
Tonight, in a show of support for the striking mine workers, SWVA local president David Lehman has vowed to stand behind the UMW.
But we got people stand up here tonight and see the camo. I work for C&P Telephone Company. We wear red, and if you look around, you got red trade unionists, CWA members out here tonight to support the mine workers. We're going to be here. The CWA supports UMWA, and we always will.
The communication workers have been on strike since Sunday against C&P Phone Company. Also on hand tonight were members of a local theater group. The group has just returned from the British Isles and delivered a donation from Welsh miners and their families to the United Mine Workers of Southwest Virginia.
Charge. It stems from his participation in a sit-down which blocked the Moss No. 3 preparation plant last month. Roberts has said he's prepared for a jail term. He was convicted and fined for contempt on a separate federal injunction limiting strike activity.
A possible jail sentence. Good evening.